people that think negative thoughts, and because they don't think anybody hears them, it's still a cause, because it's thoughts, words, action, and deeds that we're making with our minds. And once I understood not to allow myself to think suicidal thoughts, that I had to discipline my mind and train myself not to think negative and be the little black colored girl that came out of Waco, Texas, that mother told her that you born black, poor, and ugly, and you're gonna die black, poor, and ugly. Once I got past all those things, I became an Osiris.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Sam Dever Podcast, episode 128. In this episode, I speak with Osiris Munir. Osiris is an entertainment personality, a television show host, a photojournalist, an author, and an abstract expressionist painter. This was an incredible conversation. I cannot wait for you to check it out. To watch this episode, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@thesamdeverpodcast. To listen to this podcast, be sure to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Here's my conversation with Osiris. Well, Osiris Munir, welcome to the Sam Dever Podcast.
Hey, Sam. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be on the other side for a change.
Yes, and thank you for having me on your show recently, which was a blast. 50 minutes literally felt like 5 minutes.
I don't know why it goes so fast.
Because you're an incredible host. I was so
thanks.
impressed. Not just how you run the show, the format.
Thanks.
You guys do a great job.
Shucks.
15 minutes the show with Osiris Munir. Everyone needs to check it out. But the depth of your questions were incredible.
I know I said one question and you said, now wait a minute, let me... What did you just ask me?
I got to get
That's kind of deep, but wait a minute. She really got some questions going in. I gotta think about it.
It wasn't the standard, so where are you from?
How you doing?
It's like,
why'd you come to LA?
Yeah, what's your artistic philosophy and perspective on this? I'm just like, okay, but I think you really made me think. And when you really get in those deep thinking conversations, time just evaporates.
And you're very, very smart. And you were bright enough to handle what I was telling. And from reading your background about you being, a speaker, and especially inspirational speaker, I'm trying to get away from all the normal words. As a matter of fact, everyone out there, I've been studying the thesaurus more. I'm so tired of everybody using the same words. I'm like, where are all the other words? When do you use them? Didn't I go to school for this stuff? That kind of thing. So I like to say you're an inspirational speaker. And even that isn't really descriptive enough of who you are when you actually meet you as a person.
Wow. Thank you for saying that. I will write back to you. The moment I met you, I'm just like, wow, we got to be friends. And just, I was telling you before the show, I can't wait to get into your background, but the body of work you have done is extremely impressive.
Thank you.
You've put years into this and countless hours, I'm sure, and red carpets and one-on-one interviews and all different types of stuff.
With no help. For a while, I did it all myself. I didn't have any money and I wanted to do a show. And I'm like, well, my associate and I sat down, and a friend, and I said, he's like, well, what do you want to do? And what happened is that I was at MCA Records and Universal Music Group. And I had started as one of the members of the Jurassic Park team at Universal Studios. So my name is on the Tritontosaurus, this leg. If anybody goes there and see the guys built it, they put my name on there. I was not only the only girl on the team, but the only girl of color. And I love being around nothing but boys. I'm like, oh my gosh, and I grew up with brothers. So one sister, but the rest boys. So, and they made me feel comfortable. There was no kind of anything going on that I had to feel like, oh, I'm different because I'm a girl. I just felt like one of the guys. And the interesting thing is that it went from 3 people to, by the time the project was done, it was like 45 people.
45 people. And what exactly was the project?
It's a Jurassic Park project.
So
I worked
is that the ride or is that
the ride
oh,
at the Universal Park?
I always go to City Walk to the movie theater there.
Yeah.
It's right down the road.
Yeah.
But I've yet to go inside the actual park itself, which I need to do.
I was on the team. David Pushkin was the head of the team, and they wanted me to stay, but I wanted to do music and I wanted to get more into entertainment. I'm like, little more less active than what I was prepared to do. But I love the guys, and I have pictures of everybody, and and what, don't leave. I had so much fun with them. But it was interesting going in the back and opening the back door, and there's a big hole in the ground. Like, don't come over here. There's guys in helmets and stuff on. What's going on? So that was exciting.
So I didn't even know that.
That's how I started. Yeah.
So taking us before that, you can go as far back.
Okay.
Little as you want. What led you here to LA? What's your background? I read it in your bio, but it's like I want to hear your version.
What led me here to LA? Well, I was living in Northern California, and I was in a marriage that I was unhappy in. And it was a 9-year marriage, and I had 2 children, and I didn't know how I was going to get out of it. Very young, like in my 20s. Didn't know how I was going to get out of it, but I'm like, I know this is not my lot in life. And my mother had always really preached to or pushed my sister and I to get married. That was a big deal to them, where they were born in the 30s. So marriage was a big deal. If you had a husband and some children and had a home, you were like together. But for some reason that didn't fit me, even though my mother, kind of got in there in my head, but it didn't fit me. And my background was very harsh as a child. My mother especially was very hard on me. We were all by different fathers. And so I wasn't the father of that time she was married to my the twin brother and sister. And I just lost my sister this past April, last April.
Sorry.
That's okay. So I was the one that was like, okay, well, where do I fit in? What am I doing? So as soon as I could understand what the military was, and being around nothing but military people in the family, all the men in my family, military guys, Marines, Army, Navy, Air Force, every branch of the military. And all the women were pretty much the children, have children and married. But I told my dad, I don't want to be in Waco. I want to go into the Navy. And my mother was like, oh, no, you're not going into the Navy. You are not, blah, blah, blah. And my dad said, let her go if she wants to. Let her go. And so my dad actually is the one that was like, Mom, thank you, Dad, was my hero, because that's the only way I would have gotten out of Waco, Texas. And after that, the rest is a ride of my life. I went into the military and lost my mind. I was with everybody from all over the world, different cultures, different beliefs, everything from all over the world, and really absorbed it. And I was gang raped in the military, which is why the VA diagnosed me with this, that, and the other. And I have a talk show that I'm very open about what has happened to me. I'm not shamed. And number one, I'm much mature now. And so these stigmas of, oh, you were raped, blah, blah, something's wrong, it's not there anymore. For the people that did that, I'm sure their karma came back to find them. And it actually, this may sound very strange, but for me, I don't know. There's a movie called Kung Fu Hustle by David Chow. David Chow is one of my, a favorite director of mine. Not David Chow, Stephen Chow. Sorry about that, Stephen Chow. And it's a movie called Kung Fu Hustle, where it's a comedy but dramedy at the same time. And so in the movie, this kid is very kind of shy and timid. And they're after him. And he starts out with this book, like a sutra. And he's like, oh, yeah, for $10 or $1, I'll teach you the wonders of the mystic world. And you can learn how to do this and that, and be the Buddha, and all the teachings of Kung Fu and Shaolin. And so anyway, it was in this booklet. And when he was a little kid, but he was always timid. And so they go back and show the story of him being picked on and this young girl that was deaf being picked on as well. The guys turned around, took their things out, pissed on the girl in the movie. This is in the movie. And this kid, they beat him up. Well, the kid grows up with a stigma. So he's trying to act like a tough guy. I'm a tough guy. I could do this and that. So they start trying to be a bully, him and his friend. But instead of doing that, what were they called? The Iron Axe Brothers. And they show dun 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 dun. They have this big axe and they go dun dun dun. And these guys are running around faking, saying they're members of the gang, but they're not. So when the actual gang shows up, they do something stupid, is when it turns into kind of like a comedy, and they hit the gang member in the head by accident. And the guy ends up in the tub and they go, who did that? Who did that? And it happens again. So long story short, he gets beat so bad, which is how it relates to my story, where something so traumatic happens to you, then rather it killing you or making you weak, it brings the beast out in you. It brings something like a lion or something out. And that's kind of what happened to me. After that happened to me, it was like, instead of it, it screwed me up emotionally and everything, but spiritual wise, it made me driven to overcome the inability to fight for myself, to fend for myself. Well, why did this happen? Well, why did they were able to beat me up? Well, how did they hold you down? And it was in a empty dumpster. Well, how did they get you to I was going through all of those things. We never considered that it would be mental illness or anything again. I was born in the 50s. I didn't know what mental illness was. They didn't have a mental illness. Your mother's like, shut the hell up, get over there and sit down. And if you don't shut, I'm going to beat get the belt and beat your butt. That was your mental illness, wellness thing, deal with it. We didn't have it. And even as maybe in other places in the world where people had money, they did have therapy or something. We didn't know anything about all of that. We dealt with it, and you used the church. We grew up using the church as your therapy. Just go to church and pray to the Lord God or whatever, and it'll help. Well, in my case, none of that was working. And I didn't know why. So by the time I got to the military, I was a hot mess. I didn't know what to think, who to be, but I just knew whatever I was supposed to be, I didn't fit. So in the military, after I got out, I had a miscarriage in the airport and didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was. Not another little young country girl, don't know nothing. In those days, women didn't talk to women. You didn't talk about your menstrual cycles. You didn't talk about abortion. You didn't talk. You just done. Okay, well, I don't know what's happening, but I know my intentions that I got to get home to Waco to see my parents. My parents had moved by the time I got out of the military, and I was honorably discharged. And again, never knew that would affect me. Okay, pull your pants up, get on the plane, go where you going. Done. I didn't even tell my parents. I was too embarrassed and ashamed, thinking, what's going on? Why did that happen to me again? Just, well, why did that happen? Well, what does that mean? Well, what went on? Nothing. Just had to learn everything by myself. Learn through on the job, do an OLT on life training, on the life training. But anyway, so by the time I got in the military, my parents had moved to Santa Rosa, California. Because my uncle, my stepdad's brother, lived in California. And he made promise of a better life, and you can really do a lot more things out in California. You're talking about men of color, Black men that were born in the 20s. My dad was born in 1922. My mom was 32. So my dad was 10 years older than my mother. So by the time, he was very influential on my mother. Well, we're going to move out west. Well, that's where I came in by the time I got in the military. Well, I had always knew I was going to go to California because I used to watch Wagon Train on the TV. And I was like, I'm going to go to California. I'm going to become rich and famous, and I'm going to take care of my mom and dad. You just see, I'm destined to be, that was what was in my mind, but nothing in my environment dictated that I was going to do any of that because I didn't know enough to, where do I start? How do I get there? So anyway, thus they moved to Santa Rosa. I end up going to Sonoma State College. I went to school at night and got a job in the administrative records division there during the day with my baby, whose father was a ship's barber. That's why I had to learn to cut hair. He taught me how to cut hair. I cut my hair myself. So my daughter and I didn't go back to Waco when my family decided, because my mom couldn't handle it out here. She said it was too many white people. That's exactly what she said. It's too many. Where are the people that are the color? Like, Mom, it's a mixed environment. It's, it's not like our neighborhood. It's like a lot of different people, but they went back to Waco. I decided to stay. When I decided to stay, they were like, okay, you can stay all you want. You won't get any help from us. No help. The only way you can get help from us is if you come back to Waco and you come home. Well, now that I've seen the free world, why would I go back to Waco? So nobody in my hometown stayed in touch with me. No, everybody didn't help. Nobody helped me. I ended up, staying in Santa Rosa, but had a job at the time. So got through all of that. One day and that's how I met my kid's dad. And my children have two different fathers. But my oldest daughter, I met her dad. I mean, my baby daughter, I met her dad. And my oldest daughter was by the guy in the Navy. So by the time I lived in Santa Rosa, my daughter, the oldest daughter, she was like 2. And I'm not saying their names because they don't like to be in entertainment stuff, and I don't blame them, but I, am who I am. So, but anyway, and she had to be 2. And then I met my baby daughter's father. And the first, my oldest daughter's, her father was very violent, the one I went in the Navy and everything. That was the guy I got pregnant by. I didn't know I was pregnant. I didn't know what was happening. I just saw something weird. I'm like, maybe I'm dying or something. Who knows, But anyway, so by the time I was sitting in my living room one day, and it was a very, very physical kind of, for some reason, because I have a certain kind of person, I have a strong personality. I'm opinionated. I have my own mind. Well, how can I not have my own mind when I was raised by 2 parents that told me, think on your own? Really quickly to backtrack, and then I'll bring you forward. My dad always pushed us to be educated, read everything. I don't care if it's a True Love Confession magazine, read it. When we used to ask my dad and mom questions about words, my dad's like, go get Mr. Webster. He called him Mr. Webster. Bring Mr. Webster over here. Do I look like I'm Mr. Webster to you? Pick Mr. Webster up. Look for the word. Do you know how to spell the word? You're in school. Why can't you spell? Don't ask me. Ask Mr. Webster. Mr. Webster is the whole world. Anything in the world you want to know is inside of Mr. Webster. And so they supported us in that way, like very intellectually, I would say, looking back now. So fast forward, I'm sitting in my living room in a 1-bedroom apartment with my gig at the college, and I'm miserable in my personal relationship with my daughter's father. I'm being beat, all kind of stuff. I don't know what's going on. I'm thinking, well, maybe, I'm doing something wrong. And meanwhile, I had gotten really kind of, at that time, I didn't know about anything about depression, mental illness, nothing. You just go along, like, okay, well, why am I worried about the curtains being closed at 3 p.m? I'm sleeping. So what? It's 3 p.m, And by then I had gone from acid, which somebody gave me in the military as a joke. I handled it and survived it. And actually I started liking it. I'm like, wait a minute, this is a game changer. I've gone out there somewhere.
And what decade are we talking about?
We're talking about in the 70s.
70s, okay.
So I left high school. I had to wait a month because I was younger, and I graduated early because I was smart. And I had to wait to turn 17 and go into the Navy. So went from the Navy to Santa Rosa, now living in Santa Rosa, and back to I'm sitting in my living room and I'm married, to my baby daughter's father, and I already have a kid, which is my oldest daughter. So I'm sitting there, and by then I was just smoking pot, good pot. From Hawaii and stuff like that, The boys hooked me up, in the military, because it really, real quick, the guys would pack, the brothers would go and they went to Greece and all these foreign countries, and they would pack hashish and blocks of marijuana in the back of music speakers. And so I'm a kid out of Waco, and I'm looking at a table full of, I'm like, why are y'all doing all of this? And then this guy taught a monkey how to roll joints. Remember you said, I'm like, you have to understand, we share 8% of DNA with monkeys.
Yeah, because
oh yeah, and so and he would just spitting them out, and he come through I can still see it, because in the Navy, the ships feel like they're all metal and it feels real heavy, when you're in there and you're like dumping down to walk through a door, because it's like this brass frame or heavy metal frame, whatever it's made of, and you're going in this door, and it's got this monkey on his shoulders, and he rolling joint. I'm like, man, this is the shit.
So real quick, so they brought the monkey onto the ship.
Yes, because on leave, we would get leave. So on leave, you get to go out. You get to put on your civilian clothes, go out and hang out for the weekend, and however long your leave is. If you've been a good person, you get to go on leave. But I personally, in the Navy, had to go to a captain's mast. A captain's mast is when they strip you of your rank because you've done something you're not supposed to do. In my case, I had been gang raped, and I defended myself, and I didn't know what to say. And the interesting thing is that my Lieutenant JG was so impressed with me because I was actually smart, and I worked in the accounting division, which is what they call a storekeeper third class. I was actually smart. He defended me. He said, no, she would, it's the people around her, and in some kind of way, I think she's just being influenced, but I know her, she's a smart girl. And I still got an honorable discharge because I had more good on my side than that one time that thing happened. But they literally, to this day, I don't know who all of them were, but they went in and they ripped up my apartment because you have to understand, I'm a country girl from Waco, Texas. But when I got a job, I went and got an apartment. I moved off the base. I had a kid. Me and my kid need somewhere to live. We can't live on the base. So I'm acting in some kind of mature way, unbeknownst, that I'm sending out a signal to these other people. Oh, you think you're better than us because you decided to live off base and you got this, that, and the other. So when I got home one day, they had ripped up my whole apartment. Ripped it up. Took all my canned goods and threw them all in emptied all the garbage, threw stuff all in the thing like that. And I didn't know why that was. Well, now I realize that I've always been my own person. You can draw jealousy when you're your own person and you're not a follower, you're a leader. You draw jealousy. I didn't know that until many years later. I just grew up a few years ago. You know what I mean? It took me that long. But anyway, so back to Santa Rosa. So I'm sitting in the room. I'm sitting in my living room in Santa Rosa. I don't know where my kid's dad is at the time. And we started off living in a chicken coop that was converted into an apartment. So you're talking about a chicken coop on a farm. And our landlord was Robert Boudreau, who was a famous Black photographer. I believe he did a photo cover for Life magazine or some magazine. Now, don't quote me, you guys. It's been a long time ago. And because I'm on camera and you're letting me talk, I'm being able to talk about a little bit about my life story. But whatever magazine was a major magazine, and he was a Black guy. So Life magazine, and then, or whatever magazine that was. And what had happened is that he married a girl from Chile, Katie Boudreau. It was unheard of then that a Black man went all the way to Chile. He was like, it's the best thing that ever happened to me, blah, blah, blah. They had 2 children. And my husband at the time and me and my daughter we needed a place to live, and he rented us the chicken coop on their farm. He had converted it into an apartment. It was cool, and everything. So we went out and got those big cable spools. That was our table. And we started growing plants and stuff. So we turned it into a really cool experience, probably like hippies, for lack of a better way, the 60s, them kind of kids. That's what we were into. Smoking marijuana, hanging out on the farm, hanging out with Bob and his kids, the whole thing. And so meanwhile, we went from that situation to an apartment in Vallejo, which is the last time that I was married to him. So I'm bringing you forward again, sitting in my living room, watching TV, and guess what happened?
What?
On the TV, I'm looking at the TV, and there are the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club. I'm like, what are the Beatles doing on TV? I know who they are. I'm like, oh, I'm digging. And then I see this guy coming down these stairs. I'm like, wow, that's Earth, Wind, and Fire. What are they doing on there? Back it up 2 weeks prior to that. Remember I told you that I was in my house and I didn't think of any big deal apartment because the kid's dad was somewhere. He had a job. I mean, he was responsible in that way, but immature in some other ways, as I was too at that time. But anyway, so 2 weeks earlier, a friend of mine's boyfriend, Scorby the clown, he was a clown by trade. He came over and he was a Buddhist. And he said, do you know your kids are running around the house and it's 3 PM and you're in the bed? I said, yeah. I got up, I fed them. He said, well, I think you might be depressed. Have you ever heard of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo? And I'm like, no. I said, but it sounds really cool. And I was into metaphysics. I mean, I was into astrology and all these things, but I wasn't happy. I still couldn't ground my life in reality. I'm like, how am I going to take care of myself? And if I leave this thing how am I going to take care of myself? So I'm, still working at the college. At the same time, trying to figure out how I'm going to get out of this relationship. So go back to me sitting in the living room. I said, will Nam Myoho Renge Kyo go to Luther Vandross? And he said, he said, it's the rhythm of life. I said, will it go to Luther Vandross? Because I thought it was some cool stuff to do. And so he said, yeah, it's the rhythm of life. It goes in anything. So I said, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nam Myoho Renge. I said, okay, I'll do it. It's some really cool shit. And I started chanting. And he said, you can chant for anything. I said, anything? He said, anything. And so I said, okay, I'm going to chant to meet Maurice White of Earth, Wind, and Fire. He's into metaphysics. And I don't know anybody Black that's into metaphysics. As a matter of fact, all the Christian folk thought I had lost my mind. I'm feeling with my shoe because I have my pump on and my leg is long. So that's what you hear if you hear a little crunch. I was moving my shoe around on my foot. So anyway, I said, yeah, I'm going to chant that chant that Scorby taught me because I want to meet him. And so this is what I did. I wrote a letter to the Complex Studios, which is where he was at the time, him and I can't think of the guy's name, but they were all at the complex. It was out on Purdue in near Santa Monica. And that's where all the big stars were at the time. And so his studio was out there. And lo and behold, I got a phone call from Maurice White. And when I'm like, wow. And when I heard his voice, it was like, it was projecting. I can still feel the feeling like it was a mind and not a person. I could feel his projection, like putting yourself out there, but not putting your real person there, And so I'm like, wow. And I was talking to one of my kid's godmother at the time, and I said, it's Maurice White. And she said, get out the phone, get out the phone. I said, hi, he said, is this Osiris? My sister Jerry got your letter in the mail. So when you And he said, "This is Maurice White." And I was like, "The real Maurice White?" He said, "Yeah." And he kind of laughed, but still never really shared his person. It was like he was putting a version of himself out there first. That's how I felt, like his mind was talking to me, not him. Like projection was that strong. I'm like, this is really interesting. So that's what caused me to move to LA. So I left my kid's dad. We were on the way to divorce anyway. Put the kids in a raggedy car I had found, went to LA, and that's how I got to LA. When I got to LA, I kept chanting. I met Herbie Hancock, Wayne Shorter. What's the other guys that were with him in the band with the I can't think of his name. Remember the Headhunters? All the guys in the Headhunters, they were all Buddhist and practicing. And so because I started chanting when I got to LA, and because Maurice had hooked me up, I went out to the studio. This guy said, "Man, I'll take you out there," because I didn't have a car. I didn't even know where I was. But again, the problem was I didn't think reasonably. I'm thinking like somebody with stars in their eyes. You got a kid. You better try to find a job. No, you ain't gonna be rich and famous just because you know Maurice White. But that's how my mind was thinking. And so before that, I was keeping a journal of dreams that I had about meeting him before I actually met him. That's what happened. Still have the book. And he would come in my dream. I said, "Well, I've been dreaming about you for years. And I knew I was going to meet you some kind of way. I knew I was going to meet you, but it's because of my connection to him that I met all of these other people." And before I would run into people that knew him on a bus. And I would run into people that I'm like, "Do you know Maurice White?" They're like, "Yeah, I work in the band." Wayne Vaughn, one of the writers. I ran into Wayne. Wanda, his wife, is one of the Emotions. And so they were connected to him as writers and singers and stuff. It was just all these mystical, magical things that started happening once I started chanting. I am not, now, chanting works in a weird way. Chanting will morph itself into whatever the individual is at their highest version, So I have always liked metaphysics, but metaphysics has nothing to do with chanting. Chanting is purely Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, is purely based on the law of causality, which is like any other law in life. It's like the law of gravity. A lot of people don't realize the law of gravity is real until you go and jump off of a building. Oh, the guy crashed. It's the law of gravity. It's a real law, whether you know it or not, And so chanting only deals with the law of causality. That's the difference, purely the law of karma, cause and effect only. So that permeates everything because everything is a cause and every cause produces an effect. So I talked to Maurice about that and we talked about that and he kind of started doing something. And then I found out that he told me that he had a condition, a medical condition that eventually he announced to the public. And I encouraged him to announce it, that I didn't think it would take anything away from his people being his fan. And meanwhile, but at the same time, I'm dealing with a celebrity. In my mind, I don't look at people like that. I really don't. And I think in some ways his ego might have been like, she talks to me like I'm just a regular person. And I did. I don't care about who you are, I mean, I've always been like that. I have respect for celebrities and entertainers, but in my opinion, and people that I met out there that are celebrities, and I'll come by you and just like wave my hand or something, you know better than I am. And I mean that. I don't care if you're the lawnmower outside mowing the lawn. They have no better than you. It's just that their mission in the world is to be in the field of entertainment, to deliver their creativity to our world. So when I met Maurice, I would have like an honest conversation with like him, like I'm talking to you. And I was the only person that would do it. Everybody else, when they meet celebrities and famous people, they think they have to be somebody else. And I told him I was a Buddhist and that was my priority, was chanting. But at the same time, I chased him too. And since then, I would never chase another man after I did that. Because I did that, and without realizing I'm dealing with a celebrity that has, like, in my mind, I'm thinking I'm the only person. I'm not thinking there are millions of women and men or whatever out there, that are digging this guy. I'm not thinking like that. And then he wasn't the kind of person. He was seemingly very reserved. And I say seemingly because, in my opinion, he never really allowed people to really get to know him unless you were really, really close to the castle. And that was reserved. But I had some amazing, deep conversations with him. And they were about metaphysics and life and things like that. And I would say, if you ever go before me, how am I going to know it's you? And he said, oh, I'm out there. I travel all the time. We would talk about things like that. So for you ladies out there that might have been connected to Maurice White, Maurice was never into one person. As far as I knew, he had a plethora of people that as options and people like that. I was just fortunate enough to talk to him and get a lot of wisdom and knowledge for him. But no, I wasn't his girlfriend, all of that, so people out there call themselves being jealous or whatever, that I knew him or whatever. I don't care if you knew him. It doesn't matter. I knew him in the way that I knew him and what he allowed me to know about him, but he had his own life or whatever. But the moments that I got to spend, which I did, I got to go up to his home, spend some time with him. And it was just, I will never, ever forget some of the things that we shared and that he taught me about being a person, being in the field of entertainment, what to expect. He even wrote, there's a book that he wrote. The book came to me. I wasn't even going to buy it. I was in somebody's medical office and the book was on the shelf. And I said, wow, I know who that is. And the doctor said, do you know who them? And I said, yeah, I do. And he said, you can have the book if you want. I was like, so it was always all of these kind of spiritual, kind of ethereal connections with him. Nothing sex, and we was in a relationship, nothing like that. I am so happy that I didn't even get to experience that, because I got a whole another kind of exciting experience versus the whole, I was another fan, that got laid or whatever, so I felt very special, that I felt protected.
And actually, what was exactly in the letter that you sent him?
I told him I was a Black woman and I had gotten into metaphysics and how the Black Christians didn't like me. My family thought I had gone crazy, and I had been into astrology, and I studied with a guy who I'll talk about in a moment, Robert Kimball, who was a part of when I got into metaphysics in Santa Rosa. My introduction into metaphysics was, like I said, after I got gang raped and everything, it opened up something in me. But by the time I got to Santa Rosa and my parents and everybody moved back, I started having these mystical experiences. That's why I don't care what people think about all this stuff. You can't tell me what I have not seen with my own eyes. I dare you to. You can't tell me what I've lived and what I've experienced and seen with my own eyes. And I wasn't high, and no, it wasn't drugs. I was clear-headed, as clear-headed as I am now, and things would happen to me. Like I remember I ran into this guy that was a photographer, and he said, can I take you out to a graveyard? And I just want you to tell me everything you feel, and I'm going to film it. And he used infrared film. Infrared film picks up what they call Kirlian photography. Kirlian photography is the auric field that plants, animals, people, everybody has one. But if you ever want to see it, get infrared film. And infrared picks it up. It's light enough to pick up photosynthesis. And that's what he was doing. So I said, and he said, you're psychic, aren't you? And I said, I don't know what psychic is. He said, it just means you're intuitive. You can pick up things and feel. I have a lot of dreams. I see things in the air. I see things, moving up in space. I don't know what's going on. There's no one to talk to about it. So I had to do a lot of studying on my own. And then I ran into a group of Rosicrucians, and they took me in and they trained me. They trained me how to do remote viewing.
What are they called?
Rosicrucians.
Rosicrucians.
And a lot of them practice metaphysics. I went to a wizard academy, and they teach just people, and people are ignorant, and it kind of makes me upset because when people become in any religious group, just because it's something they don't understand, they shoo it away. Oh, I don't understand what that is, so it must be heretical or whatever. But the fact is metaphysics is what led me into being a Buddhist, because I knew it wasn't the all end all.
And I'm asking for my own sake, just so when you're saying metaphysics, what exactly does that mean?
Occult sciences, astrology,
So anything outside of the standard
anything
things they
outside of
teach.
your conventional,
Okay, gotcha.
not higher learning, but astrology, tarot card reading. Edgar Casey, who is a documented, has a institute in Virginia. Documented cases, they used to call him the sleeping prophet. He would go to sleep and diagnose people in his dreams, and that's how he became famous. So these things are documented for those of you out there who just don't know anything about these fields, and you're maybe ignorant because your mind hasn't led you into some space outside of whatever your normal religious beliefs are. But I will tell you, these people lived on the planet and they were documented, so this is not a joke. And he would diagnose people, and he died from being overused. He couldn't say no to people that needed healing. And he was real good at healing. And then not only healing, he would be asleep, and all he would do is lay on books, on top of books. And some kind of way, he would be able to consciously or subconsciously bring that information into his mind and then relay it through dreaming and tell the people and whoever followed him they got well. And he stopped doing it, and he was supposed to do something else. And then he kept having these experiences, much to what happened to me. And so I latched on to people like that. Madame H. Blavatsky, Alice Bailey, they're all Theosophians. They're all those kind of people. And that's what being in the Rosicrucians got me into. Now, you're talking about a young Black girl, all these white folk, and a young Black girl in the midst of all of these people that nobody of color was there. Nobody. And so my family was like, she done lost her damn mind. She had went out there with the white people and I turned her out. That's how my family viewed me. And then I was struggling monetarily and with finding and grounding and, living a very grounded life. I really thought that I was going to be rich and famous. And so my mind was on that. It wasn't like, oh yeah, that may be true, but you still got to get a job and you still got to take care of yourself and all of that. I wasn't thinking like that. So once I had that experience with chanting, which in my family and their Christian belief, chanting is metaphysical and heretical because they don't know anything about chanting. So you see how things can get mixed up when people are ignorant? They thought I was doing something devil worshiping. My mom put me out of the house when I came home. You're not doing that in here. I said, okay, I'll do it in the backyard because it's making me feel better and I look better. And she said, years later, I went back home and my mom said, I don't know what you're doing, baby, but it's sure helping you. You better keep doing it. And by the time my mom passed away, I was able to get her to chant a few words. She just really didn't understand what I was doing. But everybody knew, like, wow, she went from there to there. How is she doing all of that? And she don't believe in the Lord and Jesus. And so I was kind of trailblazing some things that I didn't know that's what I was doing. I really hadn't come into myself. Now it's fully this full version that you now see. So back to, that's in LA. By the time I got to LA, that's what got me into LA. And then I didn't have a place to live. So I had left my Gohonzon, which is a part of the Buddhist practice. This is Orthodox Buddhism, Siddhartha. This is not a sect of Buddhism. It's where Buddhism, the root of Buddhism. So it's orthodox. It's what Siddhartha did out of India. And then it got broken into these different segments that it spread throughout the world, China, Korea, and then they all got their version, but that's where it came from. But anyway, so I had been living in LA and didn't know where I was going to stay. Didn't have a job, nothing. Unlike Santa Rosa, where I was living in my parents' house, and then they moved and I had to stand up on my own, okay? Because remember, they were here and then they went back and I stayed. So anyway, so I'm in LA. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. They don't know that I'm struggling. To them, I look together, I mean, people look at me like, what's going on? And then I lost touch with Maurice. I just had to go in another direction. I didn't have myself together. I did. During the couple of years or so that I wasn't connected, I really was going through a bad time, but nonetheless, never stopped chanting. I had to chant on top of people's washing machine because they thought I was practicing devil worship. I had to chant in people's bathroom, in their tubs in some cases, because I didn't have a place to live. And I was living on people's couches and chanting all the time. Finally, things got so bad I had to send my kids back to my parents in Waco and just go for it. So I went all out. I just got into entertainment, got a camera, just started doing stuff. Still no place to live, still not grounded. Still not grounded. Still in my mind, I'm going to be rich and famous, not thinking, yeah, but you need a job, So one day I'm chanting. And so I was at home with the flu in a one room, which is a crack addict house off of West Avenue in the Crenshaw district. For those of you that think I've never lived in the hood, oh, I lived there all right. And I found out that's not where I vibrated. It's not me. So I was living in a one room in a crack house with my oldest daughter. This is before I sent them back, some tracking back. So right before I sent them back, I was living in one room off of West Avenue and Crenshaw Boulevard here in LA. And I, like I said, I had met Maurice and all these things I'm like, hey, I'm really going to chant now. I'd have met Maurice White and all these bad people, I'm in the circle. But at the same time, in their eyes, I didn't, you don't have it together. No money, no job. We don't know you. We know you, but we don't know you. And, so you're kind of hovering around a circle of celebrities, but at the same time, you're not a celebrity. And we don't see you out at the stuff that we go to, that kind of thing. So I had that gap in bringing these things together. You see what I'm saying? Meanwhile, I'm going to hotels and, trying to keep the kids off the street, trying to keep myself off the streets, and I went through a lot. I slept on couches. I did a lot of things to try to nothing what any other woman wouldn't do if you're a woman and you meet men or a man and you do what you do to survive, whatever. No, I've never been a whore. I've never sold myself to the devil or anything like that. But I did have to live with people and be in certain situations that I had to take care of myself and try to figure out how I'm going to get my kids from one situation to another. And in most cases, when I was chanting, going back to the crack house, my daughter was there one night, and this was, again, maybe a couple of months or so before I had to send them back. And the police raided the place. I had been chanting. And they had their guns out and handcuffing people. And when they got to my door, which is just a room, my daughter was there and my Buddhist altar was up. And he said, no, not them. My daughter called me. Mom, the police are. I said, okay, what's going on? I'm at a Buddhist meeting. I was at a Buddhist meeting. She said, I don't know. And she said, my mom is on the phone. And the guy on the phone, he said, ma'am, it's okay. I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing. I'm familiar with what you're doing. And you don't have to worry. Your daughter's safe, And by the time I got home, they had arrested everybody but my kid. I'm like, okay, my kids have to go back to my parents. I'm like obviously stuck in an 11 million city, and I'm from Waco, Texas, and been to the Navy. I don't know where I am, that kind of thing, and lived in Santa Rosa, but never like this. And this way on my own, independently of my family. So anyway, I sent the kids back, and then I just hit the streets. I just started doing everything I could to build some kind of reputation entertainment. I was in my one bedroom apartment. I had gotten one bedroom apartment. And I was sleeping on the floor because I didn't have furniture. And that didn't last long. Everywhere I got evicted because I didn't have a steady job. I was doing temp work. So I went through A temp, A plus. Hey, Jennifer. Back in the day, I'm still here. I made it. I was a good investment. You know, I became a temporary employee. I started, what do you call it? A temp, where you hire temps. You are the person, the counselor. So I became one of those. And I did that for a living, but I still wanted to get into entertainment. I worked for a carpet company, not entertainment. One day I had the flu and I was laying in my one-room apartment. And the Hollywood Reporter saw it somewhere along with a lot of the magazines back in the day. And so I looked at it and it said, receptionist needed for Spotlight Enterprises, comedy agency. I'm like, I can do reception. I got the personality or whatever. And I called and I never forget one of the guys, Greg, I think was his name, answered the phone. And he said, can you come in tomorrow? And I said, I've got the flu. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make it. He said, well, if you feel okay, if you feel better, just call it. If you don't feel good, call and let me know, but we'd like to see you tomorrow. So I went the next day. I was like, okay, sniffling and everything. And they were like, okay, we'll check, we'll see. And the same night they called me and said, can you start on Monday? And I said, sure. And I became a receptionist for Spotlight Enterprises, the first comedy agency in the whole wide world that was started in New York by Bob. What was Bob's last name? Jeffrey Patterson. And Bob, I can't think of Bob's last name, but Bob started it. They did the Beatlemania tour with Jeffrey Hines. They started all of your comics you see now started at Spotlight. Ask Jamie Foxx. Asked Damon Wayans, Shecky Green, Norm Macdonald. Jamie came from Oakland with Marcus, who was his manager, came and showed up. They were the only comedy agency. Jerry Springfield, tell me, Jerry, we know you, that you didn't start out. You were making only $200 or $300 a week. Spotlight got you to $1,500 a week. Remember that, Jerry, when you guys used to play the Ice House and stuff? I was there. Okay, I was the little black girl that everybody ignored. I was there when they built all those comics into who you see them now. Jay Leno started his career at Spotlight. They got him, he was being groomed when Johnny Carson was getting ready to retire. They were grooming Jay to come on and take Johnny's place. So I was there to experience all of those things. I started as a receptionist. 3 weeks later, I was executive assistant to Bob and Jeffrey in the company. I had moved that fast. Everybody liked me. When they came to the office, I was the first face. They're like, we like the homegirl, and people started coming in. It's like, who's your receptionist? She's cool, blah, blah, blah. And they really liked me. But again, it wasn't music. And it wasn't really what I wanted to do. So, I told you guys about Jurassic Park. That was my little gig. I'm like, okay. So I went from there to not having a job and being a temp. And then I started working for the temp company. And that's how I got there. And in the temp company, they put me in entertainment positions, which is how I got to the Jurassic Park position. And then by the time I got to Spotlight, I found that on my own. And so when I got to Spotlight, I had been there not a while. I loved everybody there. All the guys, we had so much fun. Sharon, it was me and Sharon. We were the only, JP and Debbie Shaler. They were there. They were like the big deals. They represented Norm Macdonald and Jeff Foxworthy and all those people who later they managed and all those things. All of those people came out of Spotlight. Spotlight was the only company even thinking about comics. They took comics from being treated as whores. I'm saying it on camera. From being treated as whores like nothing to being the respect they have now. That's what Spotlight did. Ask anybody. Ask anybody. Comics were treated like dirt to, at the little clubs with the straw on the floor, the Palomino barn, all that, and they didn't have all the sophistication now. Spotlight took them and made them reputable. And you know how they did it? They would send a cassette tape, a one-page bio, and a cassette tape, and get the book of all the comedy clubs in the country and send them all those tapes around the whole country. That's how they started comics in those days. That's the kind of work we did. We did it. We took it from the streets to where you see it now. I'm not lying. Ask anybody. They're all still alive if you want to check my story, So anyway, that's what I worked. And then one day, one of the guys' girlfriend came in, and she worked for William Morris. Music. I didn't think about TV. I thought about music. Music is my expertise. Television and film, I had to acquire knowledge. But music, I know like the back of my hand. Know it. How to tour, what to do, the package, the whole thing. Anyway, she said, one of the agents over there, Gail Holcomb, has a position open for a music assistant. What? I said, is she looking for anybody? She's like, I told her about you. I told her that you wanted to go into music. She said, Gail's a little tough, but I think you can handle it. So I did the interview. Now, most people in those, it was Triad. William Morris, which is the oldest talent agency in the world. They've been around before any other talent. Just so you people don't know in your history, they're the oldest ones in the world, over 100-something years old. So anyway, I'm like, wow. So I interviewed. Most of the assistants had to go through the mailroom first, but I went from Spotlight directly to Gail's desk. So I really didn't get the training that most of the assistants, but Gail trained the hell out of me. She was hard. She was not easy. She was demanding of herself and her assistant. I, again, was young. She didn't know she found out I had children, but, I didn't have a car. A lot was working against me when I got the job, and she knew all of that, and she still took me on an assistant, and I lasted for 3 years there. But the whole time, all I did was struggle. The money, you only made about $200 or $300 a week, and I'm like, oh wow, and and then you have to dedicate yourself to the industry. Oh yeah, well, if you really want to be an agent or you really want to be a manager, you have to put in the time and the work, and this is the pay, and you're gonna starve. But if you can last, it will be well worth it. And Gail herself had started out as in those days, secretary, but now assistant. And she had started at the Nashville branch of William Morris. So Gail, along with my own mother, got me back into country music. Because Gail was left, what was his name? Gosh, these guys are gone now, but she was trained by the guy that was the head of the comedy division of William Morris and brought into, I'm not the comedy division, the music division, the country music division, sorry about that, William Morris, and brought into the division here in Beverly Hills. And so that's how I got into William Morris. And we did all the tours and the bookings. I had to be there early because Gail had all of the back east areas, and so they're 3 hours ahead, and so we had to be there early just to be on there, 9 or 10 o'clock. So and she trained me. She taught me how to present yourself on the phone. She would always warn me, these people are not your friends. These people are not your friends. These people are not your friends. And, and so I was, being a country girl, over friendly, over the top, much too excited, much too open, things like that. And I didn't last at William Morris because I didn't have the discipline to be reserved enough to be able to interact people with the celebrities and stuff without becoming attached to them or thinking they were my friends. I'll say it like that. You understand? And so I wasn't happy. I got into music and I was like, I don't want to do agency. I want to be a manager. And so I left William Morris agreed with Gail that I would leave. And I went, that's how I went into MCA. So I went from William Morris to MCA. And then when I got to MCA, I was a temp at MCA for so long that they made me permanent. I just kept temping because in all the jobs I had, I never wanted to be tied down. I always felt like I was supposed to be a superstar or something. I did. Even now, I'm like, look, I know I'm supposed to be one of the famous. I always felt like that. And I'm it's like what, 40 something, 45, 50 years later. And I still feel like that. Like I'm a star. I don't care if I don't have, or they don't know me or whatever. That's how I feel. That's how I am. And I think that I lasted and I look like this and I present this way because I am. And again, I never looked at, even when I would go out and boy, so much has happened to me. I went from William Morris to MCA. And then MCA, that was music as well, but it was music, a record label. No TV, film, nothing, just straight up music. And there I got to work for, I met Benny, J-Lo's manager. All those people were connected to MCA. All of your Randy Jackson, all of the famous R&B acts, the New Edition, Mary J. Blige, Whitney, they were all on the label, and Just Children. Tell me you guys, I don't know what I'm talking about. I was there, but I was the spook that sat behind the door that nobody paid attention to, but I was at every single thing. All the parties, Casey and JoJo, all of those people, Patti LaBelle, all of those people were at MCA Records and those record labels back in the day. Okay? Earth, Wind & Fire was in Columbia. We used to walk in and get CDs and go and sell them because we didn't have money. They were paying $6, $7 for CDs back in the day. I made a killing selling CDs, we were able to go into the vaults at the record labels and just get all the stuff that didn't sell on the streets. But we worked our butts off. We were didn't get a break either. We were there till 2 a.m, go home, take a shower, come back, do it again, because we had to have those CDs out on the streets because they had a street date of release. I still got some of the stuff in my files, street date for release. You had to make sure they were there before the newspapers get out, before everybody, because they had a street date to be released for that particular artist. We were the ones that sat there on the floor in our pajamas, and I did that for Napster. I had a short temp assignment at Napster when Napster first started. Remember Napster, everybody? Worked at Napster, then the MCA Records, and then I got some really interesting temp assignments. I heard her name, Pat. Pat, I can't think of Pat's last name. I will, it'll come up. But Pat was a media person, a Black woman that was really very popular here. So we had the Red Apple Club, the Speakeasy. All of these were clubs that were really popular in the 80s, which is when I got into LA. So I went from Northern California. When I got to LA, it was 1981. So everybody was in LA. It was popping. Everybody was here. Everybody was in LA at that time. And I came in when everybody, all the big stars, you could actually go hang with people, you went to all the parties, and I met William Morris and MCA and all those. William Morris, Gail would give me her card and say, go, and if you meet somebody, just call me and tell me who it is, and I'll tell you what to say. Things like that. That's how we grew up. Somebody always looked to train somebody to take their place. You didn't just do something, if you die, you go away. The position is gone. You always you always were grooming somebody to take your place, grooming someone to take your place, and that was me. So I got all these experiences as a young Black woman that other Black people had. They didn't even have that opportunity. I had that opportunity, and I had a chance to polish the conversation you see me having now. When I came out of Wepo, Texas, I was talking like this. I talked just like this when I started out. That's how I was talking. And I would talk real fast like that, And I say, did that, and how y'all doing? And I had to send myself to a language lab to learn how to speak proper English in order to answer the phones as a receptionist. So you must understand, when I'm on YouTube and I see people just letting their raw, natural voices out, I'm like, that's fine, but it will keep you in a certain group. Versus when you speak the Queen's English, that you may be invited to the Buckingham Palace, and you may be able to dine with those of famous high standards and have high moral ethics, and they have all this kind of money, and you have to get to ride in their limos, and you're supposed to be quiet and not say much. All you do is keep a smile, much like in The Devil Wears Prada, where you don't say much. You're there to smile, look pretty, and make your boss, the agency, and the companies look good. So that's how I got trained into the professional you now see. And they were strict on me. I don't know why everyone else was allowed to get away with stuff, but I never was allowed. I always had to be strict. Why? Because you know better. You're better than that. You're better than that. You're going to be better than that. You're going to be better than that. You could go here. They'll only go there. But you can go there. Where is there? Where is there? Well, there is the top of wherever you think there is, so, but by the time I got William Morris, got out of MCA, Pat Tobin is a famous Black PR person here that has gone on, but she took me under her wings and groomed me, and I became a model. I started working for Marlene Stewart. Marlene Stewart is a famous production wardrobe consultant for the big movies. Go back and look on big movies and you'll see her name, Marlene Stewart. I started modeling for Marika Nack. Marika Nack is a very famous designer from Switzerland. See? Everybody except my community accepted me. Everybody. They didn't think I was too tall, too flamboyant, or whatever. As a matter of fact, the LGBTQ plus community is the one that told me I was fierce. I was out one night and met somebody from the LGBTQIA community. My uncle was one of the LGBTQIA. My parents never set us down and said this, that, and the other. They just said, that's your uncle. And when he comes, we're going to make sure, you guys can't sleep in that room, blah, blah, blah. That's it. Nobody else talked about anything. But we knew he was different. So when I got to LA, because I had already been familiar with energy, I didn't have any problem with somebody coming up and saying, you are fierce. You better stand your 5'8" frame up and walk like you got some sense. And he was with John Robert Powers. And John Robert Powers took me in, and I went from bending over because I was awkward and had big feet already, even though, I'm like, oh boy, I don't know how to walk. I'm just a tall country girl. And they was like, whip. No, they would take a stick, like when I did my dance classes, and hit you to make you stand up, and you use your legs and use your hips and you walk. And it's not about you, the person, it's about the clothes you're wearing. And a lot of modeling, and because everybody thinks they can model now, but if you have to do it full time, I dare you to do it. Dare you to do what those girls do every day. Dare you. Since you think just because you can walk a couple of hours like a model, it's more than that, baby girl. It's a whole lifestyle. It's fast. It's crazy. If you ever saw Gia with Angelina Jolie, that's pretty much what it is. And I didn't have the temperament, and I had kids, and I didn't start until I was late 20s. So I had missed a whole portion when John Robert Powers was like, you're what? Don't tell anybody that. Girl, you still you about 15 years old. You still look really young, get out there. And they made me polish my walk, and they made me, after I got there, John Robert Powers turned me on to Otis Parsons here. And I became a fit model for Otis Parsons. That's how I got a job and started making a little money doing modeling. So I became a fit model. A fit model, just so you know, are the women that you see, they make patterns off of for clothes. So you have to stand there while they cut a design on your body. That's why it's called fit model. They fit a pattern to your body, and then they make the designs out of that. After that, I went from that to being a haute couture model, and I became a fashion illustration model. Fashion illustrations are the ads you see on the boulevard, and the girls doing like this, or the guys doing like, and you have to hold a pose while they sketch you. And it was something like $75 an hour. Good money. Good money. That's how I got into modeling, and I started making a little bit of money, but my kids weren't here. They were back with my parents. They were there for like a year. So in a year, I mean, I burned it. I did everything I could. And even though I tried to be some of the other more reserved, lifestyles, be an attorney. I worked for an attorney's firm for 3 years, a Fijian suite, It's a Fijian suite is when there's a bunch of lawyers and they all do different things and they all have a suite, but they specialize in different laws. I worked for there, Arnold Schlesinger and Fern Salka, those different people who would have known me, And one of my friends got me that job, and that lasted a couple of years. So they got me. Meanwhile, all the time chanting every day, didn't miss. So I had done all those things, and by the time I started modeling, I met a guy named Martin Staten. Martin is no longer with us. And Martin saw me somewhere modeling. He said, wow. And so Martin was from a place called Gettysburg, New York. For just so you know, Gettysburg, New York is nothing but multimillionaires. I had never heard, I didn't care, didn't even know. Again, I never looked at people like that. Maybe that's why I struggled so much, because I wasn't looking for somebody to take care of me. I was always looking as being an independent person that people should help, maybe if I can get some help. But I've looked, oh yeah, I need a sugar daddy. I'm like, no, because you get controlled when you think like that. And I always wanted to be my own person. So, but I met Martin. So Martin took me under his wings, and he owned condos out in the marina at the time. And he wasn't married, and he spoke very highly of his ex-wife and his children. And so I was familiar with his family because they were friends. But he took me under his wing, and then he introduced me to some more people, and I got some more modeling work. And then I ended up at the Fijian suite after that. And I became, what do you call the girls that do the condos? And it's a modeling gig, but when they come to the condo and you greet them, hi, I'm Osiris, Martin's not here right now, but, come on in, I'll show you upstairs, downstairs, this is the balcony, here's the sheet with the information, description on it, take your time, look around, That's what I did. And then I made money doing that. Martin, he made sure that I got taken care of. And then after that gig, what did I do? This is all after the agencies and everything, when I'm on my own. And then what happened? Oh, Martin was when I was at William Morris. That's when I met Martin. So backtrack, you guys. That's when I met Martin. So it wasn't after. It was during the time I was at William Morris. And so after I got at William Morris and everything, Martin and I broke up. I saw Martin 6 years later. We went back together. It didn't work out. Meanwhile, I had at the temp agencies, a temp A+, Eileen Drasner. Eileen, she's like, hi, Osiris, it's Eileen Drasner. And Eileen was the head of the temp agency. And I met a guy at the temp agency, Victor Wimbish. And Victor happened to be the brother to Doug Wimbish of Living Color. And what were they? The guys that sang These Are the Breaks. Break it up, those guys. He was with them, and then he ended up being in the band Living Color, and the rest is history. He played with Sting, all of those guys. So that's what got me into the circle of those people.
It's not Curtis Blow, was it?
No, Curtis Blow did These Are the Breaks. But no, it wasn't Curtis Blow. It was another band they were with, started by the woman Sylvia. Who did the guys that first started hip hop? I can't think of them. But anyway, if I think of it, I'll let you know. But go back and do Google it. Just say, look for Doug Wimbish and the bands he played with, and they'll tell you, okay. But anyway, so that's how I met. And I met Melly Mel and Curtis Blow. And I'm like, oh, yeah, because they knew all of those people. Corey Baker, all those guys I met through those circles. Nathan East, everybody. I just ended up being in all these circles of people but never having clout or status, never being, the person. And then as I started getting older and I found out that I wasn't going to be a famous model, although when I got to the Ephesian Suite law firm, this is after Martin, years later, my kids are back in LA. I've gotten a 1-bedroom apartment in Hollywood. I bring them back to that 1-bedroom apartment in Hollywood. I'm still going through evictions and stuff like that, but not as bad. Not as bad. So I end up working for that Ephesian Suite in Beverly Hills. And one of the attorney's client, Dr. Ted Milner, came in one day and he said, "Who are you?" I said, I had changed my name. My name's Osiris, blah, 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 blah. And he said, "I'm Dr. Ted Milner. I'm a dentist, and I'm here with Booker T. Hogan was his attorney at the Ephesian Suite, him and his wife, Joan Hogan, and they have an interesting story. But anyway, they were at the Ephesian Suite. He said, "If you ever want to come to Europe and be my guest, I will send for you." My ears are like, "No, you didn't say Europe? Huh? Italy, all those places? Are you kidding?" So I worked at the Ephesian Suite a couple of years. And when I lost the job, I think I didn't get fired, but some kind of way the attorneys, some kind of way somebody property managers bought the building and everybody didn't work there anymore. Anyway, but I called him and I said, "I'm ready to come to Europe." He said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Okay, I'm going to send for you." So he got me a ticket and everything. And I lived in Europe for a year. And guess what happened to me in Europe?
What?
I got to Europe. I had started, when I left William Morris, remember I had told you I didn't want to work for William Morris. I said I want to be a manager and all that. And I went through that phase of wanting to be a manager. All the modeling and all this were the gigs I was doing while I'm trying to do this thing in entertainment and be this thing I'm going to be in entertainment and establish myself. So all the Marika Nat, all those things were small little gigs that I did to sustain myself while I was doing this. And so when I got there, Ted was the dentist, not just any dentist. Dorothy Donegan, Terry Lynn Carrington. He did all the big jazz artists. Idris Muhammad. I met Idris Muhammad in Austria with his wife then. And he said, "If you ever come back to Austria, we'd love to have you." Those people, all of those famous jazz artists, the Bern, Switzerland. Bern, Switzerland has a really big jazz festival every year. And then he knew all of the people and did the teeth and the dental work for all of the artists with the Montreux Jazz Festival. I lost my mind. I'm sorry, I lost my mind. I didn't even know. To this day, it's like I met all of those famous people and were in their company because Ted was their dentist. So everywhere I went, I would end up being around all these famous people and everything. But at the same time, not really trying to hang with them and get to know them. Number one, they had very bad habits. And by 19, I had become a vegetarian. And so a lot of them drank and all that. And I didn't drink. I tried to drink. It just never worked for me. And I saw myself in the mirror. I never picked up another drink after I had, called Ralph. They used to say call Ralph in those days. Ow!
Oh.
Ralph! That's what they used to call Ralph. You never heard of calling Ralph?
No.
Shut up!
Now that you say what it is, I've been there before.
Yeah, and that's what they say. It was calling Ralph. Ralph, like that. So anyway, I never wanted to call Ralph. So I'm like, look, I can't drink. I did the one time, that was it. So, but I met all of those beautiful people. And by the time I got back to the US, I had met a guy named Terrence Shattuck, who is now still my friend. Shattuck, because he was from London, and I thought Shattuck was cool. I'm like, man, I don't like Terrence. I like Shattuck. So I call him by his last name, Shattuck, Shattuck co-wrote Physical with Olivia Newton-John. And so I met all that circle of people, And I had gone, with music, I've been everywhere. the people in rock music, the people in blues, BB King and all those guys. Those were our clients, all those people. I have music by them from the record labels, box sets that I didn't get rid of, that I kept, like John Coltrane, Village Vanguard, the whole box set, they packaged it. I have the original Rod Serling 5-disc box set, which tells about Rod Serling's life that I had never known until I got it. One of my friends worked for Clear Channel, and he knew I was into Twilight Zone, and so he got it for me. Things like that you cannot, I don't care how modern in AI, you guys, the feeling and some of the experiences we had, you don't have them. They're not there. And I feel you're missing that being around those people where you can, and they were really into teaching and sharing, like Ray Charles. I got a job with Mr. Charles and Mr. Brown. Each one I worked for a year. And when I got a job with Mr. Charles, I was out of work. I begged to get that job. You don't understand. I got kids. I got to get a job. I got to get a job. And one day, Valerie and Yolanda, who are two of the people, they are still, Valerie runs his whole museum over there off of Washington. It's still over there. But they called me and said, okay, come on in. We're going to see how you do. It's a revolving door. Well, I didn't know what a revolving door meant. I'm like, look, I just need a job. I don't care. So I got there Mr. Joe Adams, and who's now passed, that was Mr. Charles's manager for years and years. It was responsible for him getting off drugs, making sure he became the superstar he became, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, I worked for them off of Washington, and when I got there, the attorney said, well, ma'am, miss, you not in the industry. You have just landed yourself into the Ray Charles industry. And they did everything in a way that Mr. Charles did it. You have to understand he was blind. And so there are a lot of things, but he invented that jukebox down in Vegas, the first jukebox for the blind people. He invented a chessboard for blind people. The man was brilliant, okay. And I still remember him. And one of the women that I met there, who was a girlfriend, and one of the only women that if she called, he never stood her up. He would always make us keep her on hold. So I knew she was something important. And one day she came into my office and she said, hi, I'm Judy. And I said, hi. And we became best friends. We're good friends now. I'm my own best friend. I don't have any best friends. I have friends. I'm my own best friend. But anyway, we became good friends. And I still can see Mr. C with his vodka and his coffee. What is that coffee? What is that drink that it looks like mocha? And he would put it in the refrigerator and he put liquor in it and he drank the coffee. Well, that was what he started doing after he got off all the drugs and stuff. He started drinking coffee. And every once in a while, he put something in the coffee or whatever. And they would tell me, just don't touch any of Mr. Charles's stuff. I didn't know this. I learned all these things. And he wasn't an alcoholic or nothing like that, but he did. He would, put it on something in coffee. What if you don't touch any of Mr. C's stuff? But I still remember him walking down the hall and he whistled. And when he whistled, he'd hit his walking stick against the wall. And the whistle would echo in the hall, and that's how he would hear the sound of where he needed to go in the building. Okay. And I said, oh, good morning, Mr. Charles. And I said, how you doing? He said, it ain't how I'm doing. It's how you doing today, young lady. And he would do like this, and he would be walking in a thing, and it would be just so amazing to meet all of these people in the orchestra and the band and all of the members, and nothing but young people hung around him. Nothing but young people. They knew his value. I mean, when he went along, like Michael Jackson, it's like when you get a certain year like that, it's like all the young people just, because they want to learn and they want to get your wisdom and the knowledge, because they know, they don't know when you might go, who knows when who might go, but especially when you get older, So I got to meet a lot of people through him. Then I got a job after that with Mr. James Brown. He had James Brown East and James Brown West. And the many out there that's still alive, you know who Vonnie Sweeney was. Vonnie took me under her wings, and I just thought, that's Mr. Brown. Now, in this course of working with Mr. Brown, the reason I got to work with Mr. Brown was not in his company, but I worked for a guy. Hi, Stephen Cooper, if you're still around, Bierce Productions. Bierce hired me. Ray Charles, I ended up getting let go of. I was the revolving door. And they say when you start moving, and a lot of people, nobody really, they were very picky, and I don't know what went on there really, but I lasted as long as I lasted. But they say when you start moving closer to the door, you know, next thing you know, you're in the other office. What happened? I thought she's in the, she in the other side now. So they move you closer to the door, unless you know you're on your way out. So one day when I came to Rachel, they said, no, okay, I don't think you're going to work out here. Mr. Adams said he don't think you, and I never will forget it. If I said some of the things Mr. Adams said to me, you know, some stuff that I never heard somebody say. So I knew it was a whole different world than what I was used to. I'm like, wow. And I got let go of. He said, you know, see, you know too much, you know, stuff. But he talked like that, you know, like, I'm going out. I'll be back in a couple of hours. I'm going out, you know. And they just told me, whatever you do, if Mr. Adams' wife called, put him on the phone. I don't care where he is. Put him on the phone. Get him on the phone. Get him on the phone. Because he ran everything, basically. So by the time I got to Mr. Brown, I was working for Stephen Cooper at Bierce Productions, which was off of Sunset across from the Key Club, the Whiskey, Go, all them places. Well, that's where everybody was at. So I got to experience all of those clubs, working for Bierce Productions. Well, Mr. Brown was one of Stephen's clients. So back in the day, you guys, they had, when the artist got to a certain stage, they brought in, what are they called? Where they're like the mediating agent. They're not with the big companies anymore, but they can mediate deals. So Stephen was like that, where he still had connections enough to people in different countries and stuff. And so he played the middleman, like a mid-level agent is what they call them. So you're not at the big, you maybe were at the big companies, but you can still negotiate deals. So he got Mr. Brown a lot of work after Mr. Brown wasn't with the big agencies anymore. And so that's when Sinbad, hey Sinbad, that's when Sinbad was doing Quincy Jones owned Vibe magazine. His daughter Kadada was going to school with my daughter at Fairfax. So I knew that whole circle of people because they all went to Fairfax High School. Okay. So I never for one, I mean, this is all, this, my whole life here in LA was like that. And so when I worked for Stephen, Mr. Brown would come to town and Stephen would always tease us and make us think he was Mr. Brown. So I'm like, Stephen, is this you? You know, this is Mr. Brown. Is Stephen Cooper there? And I'm like, Stephen, stop playing. I know it's you. And one day it was Mr. Brown for real. And I hung up the phone. Stephen called back. He was laughing. He said, you hung up the phone on Mr. Brown? You didn't know that was Mr. Brown? He said, well, he over to the hotel. I'm going to send you over there to meet his boy. His name is the judge. Now, the guy that was the judge happened to be a judge for real. He was a former judge. You know that guy chased me around the hotel room with a peg leg? And Stephen, I said, Stephen, don't you ever do that again. Don't you ever try to set me up. I make choices about who I want to talk to, whatever. I don't care who it is. You know, Billy D. Williams. Hi, Billy D. Remember you met me at the Mint Club and you complimented my boots. You said they were some cool boots. And Stephen tried to set you and me up. And I said I was scared and I decided not to go. Remember me? The little girl, little black girl that was sitting at the desk, still here, made it through. Anyway, so Mr. Brown, Steve was like, that was Mr. Brown for real. You hung up the phone, Mr. Brown. And he thought it was funny. But he sent us through a lot of stuff. He was very difficult. He was a perfectionist, and everything you did had to be done like to the T and everything. And we would go sometimes in there and he would be to himself, or maybe thinking about Adrian. I think that was the woman he was married to at the light, and something had happened to her. I think she had passed away. And he'd be sad for a minute. And we go, Mr. Brown, you want us to come in? You okay and everything? And he wanted us to get him a motorcade when he did the Vibe show. Remember the Vibe show? You may not remember. It was the Vibe show done by Vibe magazine.
Yeah, the Vibe Awards and all that.
All of that. Well, I was in that whole thing back then. And so the night that I had to go and pick up some contract for Stephen, that was when I met the judge and everything. So Stephen thought it was funny that I thought Mr. Brown, he was Mr. Brown. It was Mr. Brown for real. But anyway, so we ended up going to the Vibe show that night. And Sinbad was there and all the whole gang and everything. And so Mr. Brown wanted us to do a motorcade. A motorcade are the motorcycles you see. They accompany the stars on the streets, and that's what he wanted. So he had a motorcade of 4. We went over to the see, all these clubs are not here anymore, and that's why you can't remember, because they're not around. But it was on Sunset across from the House of Blues, HOB, House of Blues. And Dan Aykroyd and those guys owned the House of Blues at those times. And I don't know if they do anymore, but at that time they owned him and two other partners. Prince, by the way, and Sylvester Stallone were involved in a club off of Sunset, next door to 7-Eleven. There I saw Cree Summers, who had a band, and Jada Pinkett Smith came out of a band. I can't remember, but I think Cree was the one that had the band Subject to Change. And they were a hell of a band. But, people knew her as an actor, and so I don't know, if that was the problem there, but I love them. But we started going to Black and Blue was the name of the club, right next to 7-Eleven on Sunset. So Prince and Sylvester Stallone, they will all hang out there. And that's where I met Jasmine Guy and the whole people from Different World and all them. They used to all hang out there. Then Georgia's, which was owned by Denzel Washington and Brad Johnson, started on Melrose. And that's how I met Queen Latifah and Jada. I actually met you two when I was on City Walk at the Jurassic Park. You were in the Warehouse Record Store, and you had just gotten here. And Queen Latifah, I looked up, and she had this big old black afro, I never forget. And Jada Pinkett Smith looked like she was twinkling. She was so teeny and so, not the person you see now. Of course, we've all grown up and things like that, so I don't expect her to be like that. But I met them there. Said hi to him, never thought another word about it. Didn't even really know who they were. I just like, oh, they looking. Hey, how you doing? We were all looking for records, so what, So anyway, back to Beers Productions, Sinbad and those guys. So I did that for a while. Then after I stopped all of that, that was when I left MCA Records, Universal Music Group. They came in one day and we had all lost our jobs because in the record labels, in the agencies, they do what they call pink slips, where they go around in a circle. And you may not get the first cut. You may get cut the second time, but some kind of way you gonna get cut. If those companies are doing, and most of the record labels and the agency, they do that where they change regimes. Like just say you were with Randy Jackson and his group and he had all his people. Well, when Randy left, all his people left and they brought in a whole new regime. And so I came in one day and said, well, where are my things? Well, what's going on around here? And they were like, girl, you didn't know. They cut all the temps that were working for blah, 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 blah. I'm crying and boo-hooing. Oh my gosh, you have got to be kidding me. What am I going to do now? Blah, 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 blah. So I had to go back into temping and trying to keep money and all of that. Meanwhile, chanting the whole time, all these years, 44 years later, the whole time doing the whole thing. I'm talking about, what am I doing? What is my karma? Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, after that, I met Shattuck, which is what I was telling you about. And he had been in the industry. So I called him. I didn't even remember where I'd met him. I just had scribbled his name down on a Sydney Omar astrological guide. It's the astrological guide. There was a calendar and had all the moon cycles and stuff. That's what I used as my appointment books until I found out about Franklin Covey. And then I started using Franklin Covey, but I was doing that before. And Shattuck said, well, what is it that you want to do? I said, well, I'm getting kind of older. I had to be like, what, 20, 31, 32 or something. I want to really start my own business. I don't ever want anyone ever again to tell me I've got to leave a job. I don't ever want anyone to put me out of a company. I don't ever want anyone to tell me anything, have control over me. And I had made up in my mind that I was going to work for myself the rest of my life. And that's exactly what I've done. And he helped me form Ankh Entertainment. He said, I said, well, Osiris is my name. Let's call it an Ankh Entertainment. And he said, well, what do you want? And then 15 Minutes to Show came out of Ankh. Ankh is the production company behind 15 Minutes to Show, and I produced every show myself. Shattuck is one of the executives. He's my executive producer. But that's how I started Ankh, and I just started going out, and we started soliciting people to manage. I managed Doye, she's a Nigerian artist. I managed Phil Upchurch, was one of the first people I tried to manage. I said, I want to be a manager. He said, okay. Billy Mitchell, these people are all well known in the jazz industry. And then I started working with some people in media, and then I ended up on the media side. And when I got on the media side, because management didn't pay anything and we couldn't get somebody kicked off enough to start, we would do. And then we would meet talent that didn't want to listen. And all of them have fallen to the wayside. And guess who's still standing? The manager that you wouldn't listen to. But anyway, so I got more in the media side, and what happened was Lily Lipton came out of Rogers and Cowan, and I got a temp job working for Lily Lipton. Herb Lipton, Mr. Lipton. Hi, Mr. Lipton, if you're still alive. They ran her company out of their home, beautiful home off of Laurel Canyon. And I used to have to come over there, and she would have me come in there part-time, I can give you this many hours, and then I pick up another part-time somewhere. And I started doing that after I started doing Ankh. And that's how I started getting money to fuel Ankh. I just started getting list of media stuff. I found out how to do it, some kind of way I ran into it. Lily Lipton taught me how to call companies and sell the clients. So a lot of her people were doctors and people like that. And she would call. Before Cision was Bacon's Media. Tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. Bacon's Media was this big, thick red book, and it had every media company in it. All the names and everything was like $300 or $400 back in the day. And Miss Lipton had one of those books, and you would go on the book. All the TV stations were in there, and the directors, and whoever would do the segment, and you call them. And then you would send them the actor or whoever the doctor was to be on their TV show. And that's how she booked a lot of the talent. So just so you know, that's how back in the day they used to do it. You would ring them up and say, this is Lily Lipton, whoever, this is Osiris, I work for Miss Lipton. We're trying to get Dr. So-and-so on the, whoever talk show was for the day. And that's how we were able to make money. And then again, I wasn't happy there. I wasn't happy there either. I kept going. And then I went from working for Mrs. Lipton. Mrs. Lipton passed away. And so I, again, was left on my own. And I started doing little bitty writing gigs. I started as a stringer. Everybody out there know what a stringer is. That's like the low totem pole of media, where you're out there, you just barely making it, trying to get whatever story you can. And I was able to cover that. What was the big thing, you guys, that was held downtown? And something to do with the people. It was some riot or something that was going on.
Recently?
No, it was years ago. And it was downtown, and they had all the big celebrities were out there. It was something to do. But anyway, I did that. I did that. And I became a member of the LA Press Club. And I became a member of the LA Press Club, and then I became a member of the Hollywood Women's Club, and all of those things. I became a member, Marilyn Feingold. Hey, Marilyn. You know, they all kind of raised me. They all kind of like, you know, you'd be good in media. You said you really, you know, you're able to talk clear. People like you. You have personality. I think you'd be perfect for media. But I like to write. I'm like, well, what about journalism? Well, journalism was what I wanted to do when I first got to LA, but nobody would hire me. And that's how I got into the more than music of entertainment. No, I didn't know how to do it, and nobody would tell me. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm just gonna follow Maurice and him around and go from circle to circle to circle to circle until I find my way. And that's what I did. I went to all these different circles, circles and circles. Then I ended up with Shattuck, and we've been friends for years. And he helped me put Ankh together. And then when I met Miss Lipton, I worked for her. After that, I ended up getting a job writing for the Culver City newspaper for 3 years. No, 2.5, almost 3 years. They never paid me. I quit. And that's how I started my blog, Stones in the Color of Rare. And the reason it's called Stones in the Color of Rare is because I wanted to interview people that were diverse, and they were rarities. They weren't your everyday people that anybody, just like the run of the mill, oh, there's 1,000 of them, one of these people. That's what I like. I like interviewing unique and unusual types of people that I find their stories are fascinating to me. So I started that in 2012 on the streets here with one of my friends. We got a small camera. Thanks, Canon. EOS. I went to all the EOSs. I won all the way, up to, with all the EOSs, the camera. And she stood, I remember she said, Miss Osiris, let me get my stance. And she held the camera with her hands because I didn't know anything about the handheld camera stick or anything. This is just somebody wanting to do stuff and just like, I'm going to do it. And so she held it, and that's how I started 15 Minutes to Show. And I started going in and out and talking to different galleries and saying, can I interview you? Can I interview your artist? And then I never knew I was an artist myself. I was like, I wanted to do writing and journalism. And then I wrote my book, Nita. That was my first publication. I'm working on my second book now. It's almost complete. It's complete. I'm editing it, actually. But it's called The Boy Who Stood Between Two Trees. And it's nothing to do with me. It's a whole nother kind of story, but I love stories because I have a very high imagination. And so I started it in my bedroom, one room, and said, it's going to be my company no matter what. Shattuck and I started managing. That didn't work out. Shattuck said, I'm tired of being in the industry. I don't want to do it as much anymore. And he eventually said, but you can always, I always talk to you, always advise you, you don't have to worry, And so I met a bunch of people through Shattuck, and they always looked at me like, you're going to make it. You just keep going. You'll be fine. I met a lot of people, as I was telling you, when I was coming up. Daryl Igus used to be the Rasta man in Fridays. Remember the show used to come on Fridays called Fridays? And he would say, is it something? No. Is it this? No. He said, it's weed. Yeah. It was a comedy show with Daryl Igus called Fridays. You can look it up. Mario Van Peebles, I know you and knew your manager, Toby Haggerty. And I met Mario when Mario was doing Sunny Spoon. Remember Sunny Spoon, Mario? Sunny Spoon. It was a show that came on NBC about a Black private detective named Sunny Spoon. Look it up. If you don't believe me, this is all where I came from, people, and I'm still here to tell the story, thank goodness, So anyway, but after the Culver City newspaper, I started my blog, Stones in the Color of Rare. Started the blog, left there, started writing for my blog. Next thing you knew, I was in my apartment in Hollywood, still couldn't pay the rent, after leaving, Culver City newspaper. And I had a really bad car accident. And they told me I would never walk again. And my head was like doing like this. I had done something in my nervous system. And I was doing like this shaking. And Annette, hey Annette. Annette took me over to Dr. Robert Schwartz with Hygeia. He wasn't with Hygeia then. He was practicing. We were both into like new age medicines and stuff. And Rob used to get shut down all the time because he was doing stuff that the medical people didn't believe, and a lot of his friends ended up missing because he was doing, practicing holistic medicine. I'm talking about back in the day, you guys, when holistic medicine wasn't accepted. When I was doing astrology, being a vegetarian, none of those things were accepted. People thought I was crazy. What are you talking about? You're living and being just a vegetarian. My mother said, have you lost your damn mind? You gonna have a baby on vegetables. Yes, ma'am. My daughter was 8 pounds and 14 ounces. No meat. None. Healthy. My kids, they don't really get sick a lot either. And then my other daughter, my baby daughter, same thing. Big old baby on number being a vegetarian. Oh, years later, my mother's like, well, I remember you was telling us about them vegetables and all that, your dad and me, we was talking, you might want to, you might want to come back. We want you to tell us about some of that stuff. So I bought them a juicer and all that, the things I learned, and I tried to share with everybody. Nobody would do it. None of them would do it. I would talk about them like, okay, baby, But at the side, I like, I don't know. It's like, what you telling me you was a vegetarian? I ain't never heard of nothing like that. Well, I hadn't either until somebody introduced me. And that's my kid's godmother, Claudia. She introduced me to being a vegetarian. That's how I became a vegetarian. And then I met Victoris Gavinskas. Victoris Gavinskas was a guy out of Europe who taught Dick Gregory about being a vegetarian. Okay? So you have a little bit of history. That's what happened. So Victoris Gavinskas, and he died. He hit his head on a rock. Then I found out about a guy named Wiley. What is Wiley's last name? I can't think of it, but Wiley got me turned on to being a breatharian. Oh, I was going to be a breatharian. I was that way out there.
What's a breatharian?
A breatharian is when you sit and you absorb all the photosynthesis from the sun and light, and you don't eat any food.
At all? Ever?
You breathe. And then he had a formula. If you go in there now, I think it's still up. It's called the Breatharian Institute. Wiley, whatever his name. He was on Dick Cavett. Remember Dick Cavett and all those shows?
Yeah,
he was on Dick Cavett. Wiley, he was the founder of the Breatharian School.
So they don't eat any food. They just at all, like ever.
But it was a formula that he used before you take the stage of being a breatharian. Because I thought, well, because I was a vegetarian and my stomach shrank a lot. I mean, I eat small amounts of food because my stomach is so small from being a vegetarian for so many years, but he was telling me, I'm going to be a breatharian. So when I was pregnant with my daughter, my oldest daughter, I was out in the backyard in Santa Rosa when I was married and we were living on the farm. I was out there with my stomach and belly getting the sun and drinking carrot juice and all of that. But he has a special formula for being a breatharian. You have to prepare the body for different transitions. So if you know you want to be a vegetarian, you don't just cut eating meats and stuff out. It's a preparation and a process because you're taking your body from being dependent on certain foods to those foods being cut out. And mind you, if you're going to think about being these kind of things, you better which I didn't do. I just again, being curious. I want to try that. And I just start trying stuff. I'm going to try that. I did a lot of experimentation on myself. I've done everything, a lot of things to myself in the name of discovery, so I read about being a breatharian. And I was like, I'm going to be a breatharian. And I went to the doctor one day and the doctor said, you can't be a breatharian. You don't have any weight on you. You're small already. I'm afraid you're going to starve. You need some food. And I said, well, what's wrong with being a breatharian if I'm sustaining myself? He said, well, don't you think your appendages might shrink or something? I'm like, oh. And then I just never had the environment to do it. I think if I had had the environment like a supporting partner, everybody didn't think I was crazy, whatever, I think I probably would have gone through with it, but I couldn't sustain it. I just needed food, and my lifestyle wasn't relaxed enough that I could go live up in the mountains and drink Coca-Cola in whatever form. You can read when you go read Under Breatharian. It's a whole institute. It's a whole institute.
I've never heard of this.
For breatharianism.
I know a lot about those. I've never heard of that.
Oh
one.
yeah, a whole institute. And the guy is Black. His name is Wiley, and he got all these people into being breatharian. I was like, wow, who knew?
It's just exciting because there's so much untapped knowledge. Like we just don't.
I mean, and I was into astrology heavily. And then, this is how I started doing tarot cards, which eventually I got out of. I like tarot, but this is one thing I'll have to say about metaphysics in general. They are interest of mine because I'm interested, but don't think for a minute. Buddhism does not, they look at things, metaphysics, as being heretical for you guys out there, just so you know. They consider them to be heretical, not because I find them entertaining, but because they really can't change your karma. They can't make you happy. A lot of times people get confused. We start looking at people maybe as their sun sign, which that's not astrology either. I found astrology is like a lifelong study. I mean, you literally are studying. It's that deep. It's like layers and layers, because the human personality is very complex and people are very complex. So when I did tarot cards, at the time I was married with my oldest daughter. And remember I told you that I got into metaphysics and all that. Well, I saw this store that said tarot reading. I'm like, wow, they have people that can do, tarot, psychic thing. Again, I didn't know what tarot or psychic was. I'm just like, and they use cards and all of that. What happened? And before I forget, remember I earlier talked about the guy using the infrared film, and it picks up everything around. Well, that's what led me to tarot, having that experience. And what happened, everyone, is that when he went home and he developed the film, there was a circle of little mini flying saucers flying around my head, above, flying in the air. And that's what he caught on camera. He said, I knew you'd pick it up. He said, I know you can't see it, but I can see it. All I want you to do is just say, okay, whenever you feel something. If you say, I feel something. And every time you say that, I'm going to shoot. And that's what was on the film when he finished shooting. So back to what I was just talking about I was at that time studying Madame H. Blavatsky, Napoleon Hill. Oh, I was just starving for information. I was just like, I was in my whole world. So why aren't they talking about this kind of stuff?
Napoleon Hill's the man.
Oh, yeah. Napoleon Hill. And, he started me out, and somebody gave me his book. That's how I found out about him. There's another book, in The Initiation, Elizabeth Hayes. The Initiation is a book that comes to you. And it's a book of stories about people that lived in all these different lifetimes and what they went through in one of her lifetimes. And it's a book, it's called The Initiation because it's initiation into the person that gets it and receives it into the world of the occult, into your spiritual world, And so, I was like, wow. So back to being a breatharian, I was practicing all of these things, you guys. I'm practicing while I'm studying the occult, while I'm practicing Buddhism. And then eventually, tarot cards became too demanding on my time. And people were looking at me like I had answers to I'm like, I don't know. I'm just picking up things to confirm that you're not crazy, that, yeah, in fact, your dream meant this, and this is what I picked up. But I personally was a mess. Bad marriage. The man was beating me. Do you hear me? Bad marriage, no low self-esteem. Again, not blaming my kid's dad, because I take responsibility, especially as a Buddhist, you learn about cause and effect and karma. I had a hot mouth. I have my own opinion. And I don't mean a cursing hot mouth. I mean, just like if a guy says something, who the hell you think you're talking to? get out of my face, like that kind of thing. And growing up with brothers that told me to always protect myself. You don't let a man talk to you like that. You don't let guys do you like that. You don't do this and that. So I was used to spouting off at the mouth. Who the hell you think you're talking to? Blah, blah, blah. That kind of thing. So I take responsibility for that, but it does not give anyone, man or woman, the right to beat and hit on other people because they're aggressive. Their personalities may be strong. They may be opinionated for whatever the reason. But we got into a lot of problems, by both of us being very, very, very young, and not really understanding what a relationship is supposed to be. Like most people that in those days that didn't understand. But from there, like I said, I met Maurice and ended up in LA and all of that, and then back to what I was talking about. So when I was doing all these things and practicing Buddhism, I was slowly detaching from tarot because it broke my marriage up. That's what broke us up. I started inviting all of the people into the house that were neighborhood youth. I was a neighborhood youth court counselor in Santa Rosa. And I started neighborhood youth court. You become a counselor for problem teenagers. And I started doing a bunch of readings and stuff on the teens. At the time, I was telling you about the gypsies I ran into, and they had the big thing, come in and get a psychic reading. I went back home. They asked me for sugar, coffee, tea, and some other things. I never thought that they were just taking money. It was a scam. I'm like, well, if that's what they need to do the tarot reading or whatever, hey, that's what they need. They need the tea, they need the coffee. My kid's dad fell on the floor. I think he laughed at me for like 2 or 3 days. He's like, I can't believe you let them fools talk you, and you are a fool for doing all that. I'm like, but it got me into tarot. That's how I started doing it for myself and other people. And I was so good at it, I was a natural. And then I ran into all the medical people. I told you the Rosicrucians, then Robert Kimball, who's a worldwide famous humanistic astrologer. I think about Nain Rujar, Sidney Omar. Sidney Omar used to sell those little scrolls in the little tube that you used to buy at 7-Eleven, and they give you your astrological reading, and you would unroll the scroll, and that's how you knew about your little sun sign and all of that. But that wasn't astrology either. Astrology is a science, I believe it's a science that studies the human personality. Had nothing to do with karma, didn't change your karma. What it can do is give you an outline of maybe what you were born here to do, by simply giving you an impression of like someone's first breath. And that first breath kind of can measure time-wise what's matching in the skies at the time that person was born. So they're going off of the constellations that were present when you were born, the heavenly bodies that were around when you were born. There's nothing mystical about astrology. I used to get pissed off when people, try to make these things heretical. If you've never studied astrology and you don't really understand some of this stuff, please don't put stuff down you don't understand. Please stop doing that. Maybe if you went and read a book and then you can say, I'm not into this kind of stuff. Much like people that aren't into sexual stuff, or people that do all kinds of weird things that none of us are into, but that's what they're into. It doesn't make it good or bad. It just makes it stuff that we may or may not understand. Some things are perverse. That's a different thing. But if you're doing things and you're not harming other people and you're trying to help people, maybe even counseling, therapist, all of those people, some of those people use astrology to help better understand their clients. Again, this is not sun sign. I'm not talking about, I was born in the month of Scorpio. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about little bitty degrees of energy that you have to measure on a chart. They were born under 5 degrees of the sun sign of Aries, 50 minutes, but they're not quite in the sun sign of Aries because it's only 5 degrees. And since each house is 30 degrees and there are 12 houses measuring a full circle, that's only 6 degrees of that 30 degrees in that first house. So there's another 15 coming. That's astrology. And I guarantee you, by the time you do it, your mind is sharp because it focuses you on doing these mathematical things. I don't know about numerology other than I've danced upon numerology, but I never got into numerology. I was afraid of numbers. Astrology got me into not being afraid of math by explaining to me, this is what this little degree means. It means this person's personality may show a little bit of an Aries, but they've got about 15 degrees of Taurus in the next sign. So that's the reserve part you see of them. And that's why they're not start, stop, because they got this much of the other sign, they got that much of the other sign. Then you have to worry about their parents. What were their signs? And their parents' signs. And what was that? And then if you take a natal chart, you can actually find your own family in your chart. You'll see every sun sign or every sign in your family, it's in your natal chart. Thus bringing to mind, oh, wow, that's why I have karmic relationships with those people because, oh, that was my mother. I have Libra rising. Both my parents were Librans. I have Moon in Leo. I married a Leo, sun sign. I have Mars and Scorpio. I've had many relationships with people that have scorpionic tendencies. Makes me very strong, makes me very willful, very resilient. Probably I run a fever, wouldn't die. My blood pressure went up to 200. I didn't die. In Texas, because I didn't have my meds on me or whatever I was taking, I had to use apple cider vinegar to get my blood pressure down before I get on a plane. It went to 200. You know what they say? We don't know why you didn't have a stroke. Because I shan't. And I know some things about my body. And I know some things about my mind. Understand, I told you I was trained. I started reading a book, and then as I kept reading books on the occult and metaphysics, people started to show up in my environment as mentors. That's the truth. I'm not going to sit here and try to fail for you Christians or whoever else is out there. You don't believe these kind of things. I'm telling you, it's what happened to me. Some of these people are still alive, and they can tell you themselves. But that's what happened to me with my own eyes. I met the Ramtha. At one point in metaphysics, I ran across a series of books called Seth Speaks. Seth Speaks is a series of books that was written by an author called Jane Austen, Austen, I believe. Jane was riding in the car with her husband one day, and these are documented things. So again, if you don't believe them, I don't care. Go out there and look for them. Just because you don't believe in the law of gravity doesn't mean it's not real. Go and get on top of a building and jump down and tell me, isn't gravity not real? Same thing with the law of causality and what I'm telling you about. So anyways, but Jane was sitting in her car one day with her husband. They were driving, and in some kind of way, the car stopped, and she hit her head on the steering wheel. And when she came up, she was a different entity, Seth. Can you imagine your husband? What? Come on now. Who are you, Seth? I'm Seth. A masculine voice, not a woman's voice. Definite masculine energy, much like schizophrenia, people when they can completely switch personalities, or people that are psychos, that kind of stuff. But she wasn't a psycho. So during the whole time she was channeling Seth, she wrote a series of books called Seth Speaks, and when it was over, he left. I was reading people like that. I don't understand why they're not talking about stuff like this. This is what's going on in real life, not your math and your science, even though that may help you get a job or whatever. But I would tell you that all the schooling I got, none of it helped me get a job. What helped me get a job was common sense, trying to match what I actually knew to what my experiences were, and trying to find a job to fit that. And none of it fit what I knew. I was into astrology. They weren't hiring metaphysics or people doing things like that. But back to astrology. So that's what I learned from astrology, but I was still unhappy. And even though I was reading, Seth Speaks and Napoleon Hill and Madame H. Blavatsky and Alice Bailey and, all of my teachers, hey, y'all, I considered those my teachers, and they're all on the other side. And so while I was doing those things, I was becoming better at Buddhism, because Buddhism is not Christianity. There is no belief in God. We do not believe in anything outside of the human being itself. We believe that we possess the same power that we call God, that we possess that condition or state of life within the 5-foot frame of the human being. So there's no need to go outside of yourself. There's no need to consult a psychic. There's no need to consult astrologers, because as you practice, whoever the individual person is, organically, you would lead yourself based on the law of causality and being in rhythm with the movement of life. I'm talking about the rhythm of life. That's a daily life, in and out, night, day, in and out, all those things we go through, that the person leads themselves into the correct situations. I mean, I've seen that with my own eyes. And so that's the difference. And so I would never try to make them comparative. There's no comparison. Buddhism is something you've never heard of. One of the members was telling me the other day about the three visions of the Buddha. And we were talking about psychics and everything, and I was saying, yeah, I'd like to talk to psychics and people, because I want them to understand what happens to you when you start practicing, you start chanting, and you do mantras, and it goes inside of there and everything. Again, I'm not saying this is the only way, because I know it's be a million arguments. How dare you say it's the only way to do things, and there's this and that. And so Buddhism is supreme, in my opinion, based on what I've experienced. Now, if you don't hang around long enough, you do Buddhism for only a few days, and you don't get what you think you came for because you're shallow and looking for material things, it does do that. But more than that, inside, it's inconspicuous. It's like a tree. If you don't see the tree and you don't walk by and it was a little bitty bush, and then you go by one day and the tree is big, that's Buddhism. That's how it develops the person inside. Some people may be very proficient at intellectualism. They may be worthy of being a Yale or a Harvard student, but they still have karma. Somebody in your family ain't doing good. They're not yelling Harvard, or they may be going through. That's all of the things that Buddhism addresses. Buddha means a person that has attained enlightenment. Bodhisattva, which is what I am, I was told, are people that are practicing to become enlightened. We're seeking enlightenment. The world is shallow for us. Sex, drugs, all of that stuff, it's shallow. It's shallow. You know, them little relationships we cry over and all bleed over. My relationships is with the multiverse, with something beyond my human comprehension, for lack of a way to say that, or a better way to explain it. But by the time you get to going through the 10 worlds, hell, hunger, anger, animality, rapture, tranquility, bodhisattva, Buddhahood, you see the different stages. As long as everything is going good, everyone is in the stage of tranquility and rapture in heaven. But if something happens to you, like your boyfriend hits you in the face or the mug, you're going to hell, don't you? Tell me you don't. Tell me you don't. This is what Buddhism deals with, those different conditions that daily life goes through. That's why it's not akin to a God. The word God is small. It's like a joke compared to what Buddhism is. Buddhism takes you outside of your human perception. It develops the mind that is undeveloped. It delves into the deep parts of the subconscious and brings the person into their full consciousness. And so if you, like I said, well, if I'm a Buddha, then I probably wouldn't be on the planet. This would be like, look, this is boring. And it is. It's boring to me. The things that people find problems with now after practicing for 44 years is boring. Boring. We're stuck on little bitty things that don't even matter at the end of the day. They're fighting a war over land that nobody can take with them, killing people over something that you don't really own either. You're going to die. Wow. See what I'm saying? Die. You're fighting over something that nobody really owns, because as human beings and as entities living on a planet, we die, don't we, eventually? So what are you really fighting over? What is that about? And so that's what the kind of things that Buddhism addresses. The war obviously is within a person. My anger is within me. That's why when it came to you, we had something to talk about, because both of us have that in us. And then if that magnifies, wow, we got a whole group of people now. And now we got a whole world. And next thing you know, everybody's fighting. So it is a real condition of anger, isn't it? And hell, what about that? How do we get in that? Well, the last time I saw a drug addict on the streets, they looked like they were in hell. I didn't see nothing heavenly about their face, their behavior, nothing told me. But I've had very enlightening conversations down on Skid Row with alcoholics. who for one moment had a moment of clarity, and it was enlightening, but they were in hell. And some of those people I got to practice, they're not in hell anymore. They stuck with it. It's something you have to stick with. Much like if you want to be a dancer or a writer or anything, you have to get the discipline and you have to work it. It's a process of developing into the best version of a human being that you can see. And I came from all of those places. And my face don't look like I'm 95 years old. I don't look all tired and beat down to yeah, one day I'm gonna see my Lord, and that's how I saw, and it turned me off. It made me angry when I saw my mother die of things because of what she believed in. I couldn't get her to understand karma. And I saw my grandmother, all these beautiful people that died all afflicted and angry and stuff because they were praying and they didn't understand cause and effect. That's right. They didn't understand cause and effect, but they might have known about Jesus and God, but nobody taught them about cause. And I'm not talking about reap what you sow. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about cause and effect, where everything you do matters. Everything from the most minutest thought you have to the biggest action that a person could take. Cause and effect. It builds up like fortune in the bank. If you've made a lot of negative things, let's say you talk about people behind their back, or you in your mind and they don't hear it, what do you think cause and effect is? It's marking. Osiris talked about so-and-so behind their back and they didn't hear it. That's a negative. That's unfair. Talk to them about it in their face. Are you so brave? Go talk to them about it in their face. People that think negative thoughts, and because they don't think anybody hears them, it's still a cause, because it's thoughts, words, action, and deeds that we're making with our minds. And once I understood not to allow myself to think suicidal thoughts, that I had to discipline my mind and train myself not to think negative and be the little black colored girl that came out of Waco, Texas, that mother told her that you born black, poor, and ugly, and you're going to die black, poor, and ugly. Once I got past all those things, I became an Osiris. And that's who you see. And I don't look like I've been through none of the stuff I just told you. And I went through every bit of it. You can ask my kids. They were there. Nobody thought I would make it out of it, but I kept going. And I kept doing my practice. And I kept saying, you got to develop. You have it in you. I know that you can be a different version. I know that you can be the person that your parents didn't thought. And most people my age, they look old and run down. And I'm serious. I'm going to tell you, you look old and run down. And you don't look happy. And you're sitting up there thinking just because you're older, you're not supposed to have it really. Well, I guess I'm dead now. Or I'm 80. Or, I guess I ain't going to meet nobody. You can meet people when you're 90 years old and have fun for how long it lasts. You could last another 20 years, another 5. There are people 30 that lasted 5 years and they're gone. So you can't live like that. We have to live in kind of a forward movement, moving forward all the time. Learning and moving forward, learning and moving forward. It's a process, learning and moving forward, overcoming and moving forward, overcoming and moving forward, until one day you're all grown up. I just grew up like 2 years ago. It took me a long time to grow up. I don't mean I wasn't emotionally mature. I mean, grow up where you understand what's going on around here, And it's a big old world out there and you understand. And I believe that through the eyes of the Buddha, I was going to say, we were talking about, someone said, have you ever heard of the 3 visions of the Buddha? I'm like, yeah, but I don't quite understand, because Buddhist doctrine is very deep, it's very deep. I said, well, what are the Buddha's visions? He said, the first vision is like people in the regular world. You just got 5 senses. You're going to work, you're coming home, you have your partners, your relationships, you have your kids, whatever, your marriages, your life lessons. Second vision of the Buddha is your psychic people, your tarot card readers, and all those people that can see heavenly beings. They're very perceptive, they're intuitive, things like that. But the third vision of the Buddha is the Buddha itself, and there are no words. None. It's incomprehensible. I would akin it, for lack of a better way, because I'm not off the planet. I'm still in a human body and subject to the rules and vision of the human body. But I understand. but I'm in a human body, and so I appear in a human form and all of that. But when you start developing from the inside, you go beyond being human. So anyway, but that's when it's beyond words. I would say that it's close to a feeling of love or hurt that the person feels it, but you can't explain it to anybody. They'd have to go through it themselves. If you haven't been hurt in a relationship, or if you've been in love and whatever, you can't explain that feeling. It's like, I don't know, man. I don't know how to explain it. I just know it felt like cherries or apples, and I felt blah, 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 blah. My heart stopped beating fast or whatever. But until the person experiences it themselves, they don't know, even it's on an intellectual level. Because even saints and sages have karma. Jesus was hung on a cross. That was his karma, to be hung on a cross so that he could pass down his wisdom to the world at that time. I will tell you that Buddhism is older than Christianity. Go look it up. So a lot of things that we experience over here in terms of information, it's been cut down, watered down, cut up, much like an editing film, like you're going to edit. Let me edit it down that people can understand it, because we tell them the whole truth. That's what we're getting, versions of something much bigger than we understand, because it's all been cut up and cut down, and they've hidden some of it, because if you get the real knowledge, you might end up, maybe you might run things, and wow, if we tell Osiris how much power she really has, she might become something we can't handle, another Einstein, or one of them kind of people that they shut up, Tesla. You got all your cell phones and all that stuff from Tesla. Not Elon Musk, Tesla. Go look it up. They beat that man. They made him emotionally unstable and made him think he was crazy. He died starving, and we're using everything that he thought of. Give credit where it's due. That's where it goes, to him, not Elon. I don't mind you, Elon. I don't know you personally. You could be a nice guy, and they could be lying about every single thing about you in the media. I don't know. But from what I read from you, the last time I checked, you're still human. And you still have karma. So just remember, that's what I said to you. Don't forget, the law of cause and effect is strict. And what's going on now in your life, if you live long enough, then that might be going on then. So don't forget, we all have to get old if we live and have enough fortune to do so. So that's what I got to say to you. Don't forget, cause and effect is strict, So anyway.
That was amazing.
I mean, that's pretty much what's happened in a nutshell. My kids are now older. They live in Australia. They all moved to another country.
Well, Osiris, I think we can do multiple segments here. I mean, because you have a whole, and I encourage everyone, we're going to get to your links here in a second. I mean, what an incredible life you have lived. And I really appreciate, and it was quite the experience just to be able to sit here and take us through that journey. I mean, you have lived a lot of life. And, what I thought was interesting, you said you were so, and look, I've what got a lot of us out here. I want to be rich and famous.
Yeah, me too.
I used to watch MTV Cribs back in the Midwest, like I've said on your show, and like, oh, Hollywood and palm trees and Mercedes Benzes, and like, let's go do it. But then it's really fascinating listening to, because I didn't know a lot of what you just said, which was like the working for Ray Charles, working for James Brown, your connection to Earth, Wind, and Fire.
That's right.
Like all of the
true stories.
You have been a fly on the wall, more than a fly on the wall. You have been around these incredible, legendary artists. And I just think it's been so interesting listening to your evolution to where you're at now. Mm-hmm. It's like everything happens. I mean, if I want to say everything happens for a reason, like but it's molded you
into an Osiris.
And
it's fleeting. The entertainment industry is fleeting. Mm-hmm. It goes like the wind, and even faster now in the world of technology, where they can get 1 million beautiful girls and 1 million this, and they can make you sing any kind of way.
One thing I want, that's a great point, because I was going to say, man, you were here during the heyday. Like you were here during the sweet spot.
When it was real.
The 80s in LA had to have, we've talked about that a few times.
I've got pictures. I've got the stuff. I kept it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. What a time.
I took stuff from the labels just so people could see I was there, you know.
No social media, no
No.
smartphones, none of that.
Jeez.
Honestly,
Oh,
Eric.
the big cell phone in the box. That's how we started. Oh, I thought I was some cool shit. I was walking down the street with that big old box phone with the first cell phones. They were in a box. Remember that you open the box and you put them in the car?
Yeah.
And you open the box and it was a phone, you take it off the
Yep.
jack. That was the first cell phone.
Eric, do you have anything before we wrap
Yeah,
up?
I don't know if this is like blasphemous or not, but like, is it okay to ask for like an example of like what the chants look like? Or is that
chants look like?
or like, yeah, like, could you give us an example of a
I'll
chant?
give an example. So
Yeah.
when we chant, we get a pair of beads called juzu beads. And the beads represent the continual life. So you fold them and wrap them in the figure 8. So because it represents the continuity of life.
Mhm.
And then we have a sutra book that is written in Chinese, Sanskrit, and Indian, the country of India, because it's Siddhartha, it's Orthodox Buddhism. The person that brought the Buddhism to current time, Nichiren Daishonin, was somebody much like us. Back in the day, they felt like, well, how are you going to have a religion and women can't do it? How are you going to have religion and only the high in the society can do it? So let's make it that any human being can do it and become enlightened and reach the same level as Siddhartha. Siddhartha became enlightened because he went outside of the palace and said, what the hell is going on? Am I being sheltered? He didn't even know poverty existed. He was born wealthy. And when he went outside his palace and saw that there were other people, he's like, this is not the way life is supposed to be. How can I be happy if all my friends and family out here starving to death or whatever? And that's when he became enlightened under the Bodhi tree. Okay, whatever that means, I don't know. I haven't been enlightened. I'm in human form. You know, so anyway, back to your question. So we have a sutra book that is almost, I will put it like if you got up every morning and you said, hi, good morning. My name is Eric. I got up this morning and I brushed my teeth and I went to the store and I called on the phone and I talked to my mom and I talked to my girlfriend and I talked to whoever you are in your life. And somebody said every time you did something, they said, shh, and they made a mark for every emotion, every thought you ever had. Shh. That's Buddhism. And that sutra book, when we read the sutra, the characters aren't words, they're characters and they come alive. They live, they're living, breathing characters. So whenever we incite and invoke the daimoku, which is chanting Nam-myo Renge Kyo over and over again, we're bringing to life these characters that are living, breathing things, which is how they can raise the vibration of the person doing them. Does that make sense
So
to
you
you?
kind of, it's like almost like you repeat those,
mantra.
you just repeat those similar words, just kind of, do you say it out loud or just like
Yeah,
under
you
it?
say it out loud.
Okay.
And unlike meditation, meditation is Zen. Meditation involves a person settling themselves, but around you, there's all this shit going on. So when you get out of meditation, you still got to go back into the 10 worlds where your mama's at, you know, somebody that lost their job, or one of your friends just died, they was in a car accident. Well, what we going to do with all of that? Where does make it make sense to me? So it made common sense to me to tell people, if you do this practice and you do it long enough, I will do it with you. I can't save you. I don't have time to save you. I don't want to save you. Save your damn self. That's why you give somebody a sutra book and chant. You save you. I don't know what you need to make you happy. You know what you need. All I'm going to do is teach you how to do this chant. You do it. You can be on your way to happy. I did it. I'm 73 years old this year, and I'm fine, ain't I? Hell yeah. Because I chant, I breathe every day. Because I chant, I have to do like this, and it oxygenates the skin. It makes the skin radiant because you're breathing. You're doing this instead of just your regular breathing every day because you're running around breathing shallow. You're forced to breathe. No. All of that makes your skin radiant and glowing and all that because you're actually doing something that can physically enhance your body at the same time. It's nothing more beautiful than seeing somebody come in a Buddhist temple, broke down, low self-esteem, no self-worth, or maybe materialistic, shallow, don't care about nobody else but themselves and all of that, and to see them change physically, mentally and spiritually, something that you've never seen before. I'm not saying that believing in what you believe in won't change you, but it will not change your karma. It will not help you change the karma of your family. You may be fine driving a Cadillac or driving the latest Mercedes, but if your family's over there starving and unhappy, how happy are you? And you got to interact with them. That's what we're talking about. Take it or leave it. Take it or leave it. I don't care who believes in Buddhism, who doesn't. I'm telling you, you messing around, spending most of your life believing in something that may or may not work for you, depending on the karma you brought in here from the other lifetime. Depending on what you brought in here to work on this lifetime. And a lot of people don't even know what that is. Well, I'm going to kill myself because I don't know why I'm really here and what I'm doing here. I was one of those people. I was going to kill myself. Just think of what I wouldn't have known any of you. I wouldn't have met you. I wouldn't have known Eric. I wouldn't have known my kids. I wouldn't have known anybody. Because at the time, my demented self in a low state of life condition, kill myself. As a Buddhist, you could never do that because you understand how important life is. That's why. Not because there's no reason for you to kill yourself, but because you understand how important life is. That you wouldn't want to kill yourself. You can't see what the future has for you in 10 years. You could not have any money in 10 years. You could be a millionaire. Ask Orville Redenbacher, who became famous at 80-some years old for his popcorn. So just because you're not famous and all this stuff at a certain age doesn't mean you're not going to become famous. It means you have to prepare to become famous because fame has a lot of demons. And a lot of people can't handle fame, and everybody talks shit until they have to sit in the seat of the devil. I've sat in the seat of the devil and been with demons that have told millions of dollars in a boardroom, millions, billions of dollars at a record label about to get a deal, and they start fighting amongst each other and the whole deal goes sour. That's what Buddhism addresses, that kind of stuff, human stuff. There's egos and emotions and stuff ain't got nothing to do with nothing. That's what Buddhism addresses. I've seen billions of dollars get squashed because the two people didn't get along. The same people that were best friends 2 days ago, till the money got there, what happened? Where's your what? You're not talking to... What? See? Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Well, it's almost as if too, and correct me if I'm wrong, like having this practice in your life. I mean, you're still here. How many people have come to this town in and out, like quick?
And died.
Right. Like, so it's like the longevity that you've had to be able to be in these circles and these rooms and be who you are.
And that I've gone through all of that and it didn't change me.
Right.
It didn't make me hateful.
Right.
I'm not mean. I don't hate anyone. I'm not angry at my ex-husband. I'm not angry at my husband. I'm not angry at none of those people. I am just happy that I made it through. And for you people out there that I can encourage to lift your life up. I'm telling you, when I look at good, honest people and they're suffering because maybe they've got a kidney problem. I had to chant for a kid. And chanting has really amplified my powers of who I am. I'm not talking about everybody. Everybody ain't no healer and all that. I happen to have some of those things. And it has amplified whatever that is in me, versus I'm what we call Namu. I'm Namuing because I'm a doctor. You understand what I'm about to say? Maybe somebody's a doctor or somebody's a lawyer. They have a title in society. People Namu those titles. Oh, it's Kendrick Lamar. He's a famous rapper. So wow, he's got a perfect life. Hell no, Kendrick Lamar don't have no perfect life. He happens to be a famous rapper. That's what his title in life on this planet is. He still has karma. Everybody does. Just because you're famous doesn't make your life exempt from karma. Or people who've been famous and their kids kill themselves, or, the people, they kill themselves or whatever. All of that is karma. That's what we're talking about. I'm not talking about earthly titles and Somebody's the president of the country and he deserves this and that. We're not talking about that. They all have karma. All have karma. Everybody. Somebody tried to kill him too, didn't they? Karma, or people do drugs and have died. Karma, oh, well, they were a good church person, but they killed themselves. Well, did you ever think that something deeper might have been going on inside of them that we couldn't address? I'm not in them. I don't know how to help them. They can help themselves. Here, let me teach you how to chant. There. You can do it what you will, but at least I taught you. At least you know that there's another way. You know what I mean? So that's all I can say. I happen to be, again, Buddhism thinks astrology and all this stuff is heretical, but that just happens to be who I am and what I'm interested in. I find it less boring than watching soap operas. That stuff is boring to me. Soap operas and the movies, and they killing and they shooting and they doing this, and even music sometimes is boring. I get tired of hearing the same old rhythm beat over and over and over and over again. But when I'm doing what I'm doing, I'm being in myself, it's a whole nother world. It's a world of the invisible. A world that's beyond sight, unseen, unheard, and I love it. And I can dwell there and be myself. And every day when I get up, I'm so happy that I can practice and that it keeps me vibrant, and it keeps me sweating, keeps my mind clear and keeps me still wanting to learn, and still knowing that I can learn, that I'm not, I'm like one of my friends, I'm 70-something, I've done everything. I don't ever want to say I've done everything. If I've done everything, I should be dead. I don't need to be here. That's the whole point, is having the human experience, isn't it?
Osiris, this is brilliant. This is amazing. Thank you so much for coming on here. I'm so glad we connected. I'm going to give you the last word, but before I do, where can people find you? Where are all the appropriate places? Because you've given us so much here, but people need to go online and check you out because you have interviewed so many amazing people. Red carpets, one-on-one interviews,
all of it.
Radio. You've done so much. I didn't even
know what I was doing half the time. Like, look, that's okay. I'm gonna figure it out. They gave me an assignment. Oh, let me tell you about you weed smokers out there real quick.
Okay.
I did an assignment for a magazine in Hollywood. And I was using, back in those days, they were using the film with the cameras. And you have to be able to take it out and put it back in on the little notches and stuff inside. And I went up to the Palladium on Hollywood. And I was unfocused, which is why you should never smoke before you go do your job. And don't drink either. Don't do any of those things. Be clear-headed. So when I got to the door, as all of the famous celebrities were walking by me, I opened the camera to pull the film out. The whole thing fell on the ground. I'm up there trying to get the roll. I got fired. He said, I would suggest that if you're really serious about being in journalism, you get a digital camera. And that's when I got my first camera. Plus, the guy was weird, though. It wasn't just me. He was weird, too. But the whole thing fell on the streets. I was chasing a film on the street on Hollywood Boulevard while the cast and crew went inside the theater.
And you had smoked weed.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, there will be no more smoking before I do my job, okay? That's it.
Really quick, adding on to that, and I was phasing out of my drinking day when I lived in Las Vegas. I was phasing out of that anyway, but really got me completely out of it is I started doing videography in like nightclubs and events and stuff. So you can't be doing that and being focused on the camera and talking to people. And it really helped my social skills too, because I didn't have, that social lubricant, if you will. It forced me to have interactions with people. So
well, you have to talk, but I mean, for musicians or somebody that is going to be in music and your head is on another. You out there anyway, yeah. You're in there. But if you've got to talk or interact with people or something like that, and you have to be focused and sharp, you can't be doing that.
Yeah,
you can't.
Yeah. Where can people? And you're also an artist too.
So IG, Instagram, Osiris_Munir_ the painter. My blog is called Ankh, ANKH, the word entertainment, one word, the word ONE.net. And my website is called Express in Abstract. .net. I became a painter standing in my living room one day. The voice that spoke to me that I told you guys about, and I said, who in the fuck are you? That was the voice that spoke to me. And then all these series of things started happening to me. A lady died. I met her 2 weeks before she passed away. I wasn't sure what I heard. Again, I thought I was going crazy because I had been diagnosed by the VA with all this stuff. And so I thought I was going crazy. And she called me into her home. And one of my friends is with me, my Judith Brown, my neighbor. Also, my other friend, Cheryl Gelling. They were both present at this time, so they can vouch for my story. And so we climbed up these things in Studio City. I didn't know where it was. She was lying on the bed like this, like tall lady with short hair. And I said, what the hell are you doing lying on this bed and being mad at you? So she said, who are you? How do you know that? I said, ma'am, I don't know anything. It just came to my mind. She took my hand and walked me all over the house. She said, I want her to have everything in here. She died 2 weeks later. She left me her whole art studio. And that's how I became a painter.
Wow. Like all
And I've been painting ever
supplies.
since. Everything from Italy, all over the world. I didn't even know what it was. I had to go online and what is this? I don't know how to paint. I just started. But the lady, I had painted a hat box for Cheryl for her birthday because I couldn't afford to get her a gift. And she saw it and she said, I don't know who she is, but she's going to become someone. And that's how I started painting.
Wow. That's a whole other podcast right there. We're running out of time, but
I know.
Osiris,
That's it.
that's incredible. Thank you for sharing all of this with us. I love your authenticity. I love your energy. I'm grateful to have met you and know you. So thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And always give the guests the last word. How'd you like to end this?
Smile. Always smile if you can. It works wonders. Even if you're going through something bad, smile. It works wonders. You know, it does, really. It picks you, it makes you happy, even if you try to smile. And you get to exercise your you get to have those cheekbones still be high and look cute, you know. That's what I gotta say. Keep it real.
Osiris, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye.
Hi, everyone. Sam Dever, the Sam Dever Podcast here, and I just want to thank you for checking out this episode. To watch and listen to future episodes, be sure to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@thesamdeverpodcast. Thank you so much. See you soon.